Welcome. The board meeting will now come to order at 5 o'clock p.m. Good evening, and thank you for attending the Albuquerque Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board meeting today on Thursday, September 11th. Ms. Perla, can I get a member roll call vote, or member roll call, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Present.
Eduardo Budamnaro.
Present.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Present.
Rowan Weimark. Present. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Perla. The next order of the business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask, too, that after the Pledge of Allegiance, we will take a moment of silence to remember 9/11, so please remain standing after the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Board members, any modifications or questions about the agenda?
No.
All right. Then I make a motion that the agenda be approved as written. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budinaro. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Budinaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark. Approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. The next order of business is the review and approval of minutes. Do any board members have any proposed changes to the minutes from August 14th? Negative. All right. Then I make a motion that the minutes be approved as written. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Budinaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark. Approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Perla. Next order of business is public comments. Ms. Perla, I believe there is a public commenter present. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure. Deputy Director Ali did inform me that Elena Rubenfeld was supposed to speak today. I don't know if she's in the audience. I don't believe so, but she has signed up. But just for the record, there were no written comments as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair. So she did send an email to the agency to sign up for the public comment, but I don't see her here. So,
Okay.
but
All right,
we did
then
not
we
receive
will-
any communication from her that she won't be here.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. Yeah, then we'll just move on to the next order of business. The next order of business is the reports from the city departments, APD, and a National Guard presentation by Interim Major Luke Langet.
Good afternoon, Mr. Board Chair. I just want to apologize, and board members, I don't have my glasses with me, so I can't see your names, so I just wanted to state that, so apologize. I don't want to disrespect your names or titles. My name is Luke Langwood. I am the interim major for the Field Services Bureau for the Albuquerque Police Department, and one of the initiatives I was assigned by Chief Medina was to oversee the partnership with the New Mexico National Guard. And so just to give a summary of where we are at right now from when the initiative started, I'd like to provide you with that, and then of course stand by for any questions that you may have. So we're about approximately about 14 weeks since we started this initiative back in the beginning of June, where we've had about 80 initial guardsmen that signed up for this initiative. We have had a few guardsmen that fell off the mission more on the guard side than anything to do with the police department. I will tell you right now, in about a week, we're going to have 20 guardsmen fall off the mission because they're going to be getting redeployed again on the guard side. Currently, though, the New Mexico National Guard was able to recruit about 40 more that started training. They're put through what I would label as like a academy specific for them to make sure that they're familiar with the training and policies to operate within the city of Albuquerque. So currently right now in the academy, it's the Albuquerque Police Academy that is conducting this training for them. There's about 37. So when the 20 guardsmen that fall off the mission next week, beginning of October, the ones that are training at our academy will have completed their training. So we'll have about 81 New Mexico guardsmen that are attached to this initiative that will be working with the Albuquerque Police Department. Currently, the different missions within the department that we are having them assist with, we have our field operations, and that's them being out in the field with the Field Service Bureau officers. I'd just like to give you an example and some highlights of what I mean by that. Every week, it's about an average where there's about 300 man-hours that they are assuming that would have gone to either an APD officer or to an APD police service aide. So that's about 300 hours that they are taking away from us, if that makes sense. And we're averaging about 200 incidents a week. And those incidents include calls for service, event security, scene security, traffic accident assistance, transit patrols, and welfare checks. So in addition to other initiatives that we had them do in the field, there was an initiative that we did at the intersection of Rio Grande and Interstate 40. And then obviously when we have special events, we activate them to help us with scene security as well. So a large contingent of the New Mexico National Guard personnel are assisting in field operations. Other areas of the department that we're having them assist us with is our prisoner transport unit and also our SHIELD unit. And the last one is our real-time crime center. So these are different divisions or areas of the department where they're able to provide assistance, again, in the overall spirit of freeing up Albuquerque police officers to focus on police work. I highlighted the events and incidents that they're responding to in the field. For the other missions, though, for SHIELD, what they're doing is they're helping and assisting with case preparation. So the criminal cases that Albuquerque police officers are putting together for prosecution in the courts, they're assisting with a lot of the paralegal legwork that needs to happen to make sure that those cases are ready to go. So that's how they're assisting with the SHIELD mission. With their prisoner transport mission, what they're doing is they're assisting with intake and property, again, saving man-hours. And with the Real-Time Crime Center, we have a lot of great technology that the department and the city taps into. We've utilized them to really observe our surveillance platforms and to look for trends. And when the drone technology comes online, we're gonna have the ones that are certified to be drone operators assist in that as well. Recently, the last initiative that we got into was the City of Albuquerque's transportation systems, as far as monitoring the city transit sites like our bus stops and our ART platforms for safety. And recently, we've also included them as far as making sure that there's safety actually on the bus system. So they've been doing bus boardings. All of these missions have proven to be very successful and really helps us, again, with the overall goal of having officers go back in service to do police work. So that's just a real quick overview of where we are currently at and how we are utilizing the National Guardsmen to assist us. And the last thing I would say before I turn it over for questions from the board is, again, the average age of the guardsmen, and these are young men and women that are from our community, they're familiar with our community. We do have some that are not from Albuquerque that were brought in that signed up for the mission. But I think it's a great partnership because it's really showing them what public service is about. They have interactions with the Community Safety Department, Albuquerque Fire Rescue, and then obviously Albuquerque Police. So as far as helping these young men and women who are from our communities see what public service is about and see if that is a career opportunity that they may want to consider. So it's a great exchange in that sense. And with that, I'll stand by for any questions or concerns from the board.
Thank you very much. Board members, do you guys have any questions?
Is there a finite length of time that they'll be here, or is it indefinite?
Mr. Board Chair and Board Member. We don't have a specific end date. It's a constant assessment. And again, on the guard side and the governor, of course, and then on our side, every week we are sharing our data to see if we're being efficient and effective and the impact that it is having on the city of Albuquerque. I can tell you, since they've started the Field Services Bureau, we've hit record numbers of felony arrests and felony warrants being cleared. And in fact, we doubled the amount of misdemeanor arrests that we have. We've hit these record numbers in the last 3 months. And talking with Chief Medina, this isn't the only reason. I'm sure it's a combination of efforts that the department is undertaking. But again, this is a very successful partnership. It's one of the best initiatives that we've ever done. And the National Guard partnership with other different initiatives that we're doing with the department, that's what attributes to clearing the most amount of felony warrants and making the most amount of felony arrests in 1 week than we've ever had. And to put that in context, there was 1 week where we reached 197 felony arrests and we cleared about 170 felony warrants. So very, very more higher productivity from our field officers. And again, when I see that on average, they're taking about 300 man hours away, that's 300 more hours our officers can be in service, really focusing on police work too. And again, it's worth noting as well that there's several other cities and states and jurisdictions that seeing that they observe and they see the success that we're having with this partnership, and I know they're already trying to kind of form that in their states, cities, and jurisdictions.
You started to say the average age of the Guards people, but then you never did say it. What is the average age?
They're in their 20s. They're young men and women from our community. And again, not just looking at it from a recruiting tool, both on the military side, but then also on our side, this exposes them to what public service is about. I can think of one New Mexico National Guardsman that went into the New Mexico State Police, and there's currently a few that are considering careers in the Albuquerque Police Department.
Wow. Thank you.
Are there any of them that are already MOS military police designated?
Mr. Board Chair and Board Member, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. That's it? Okay.
Sir, question on the data that you guys get on a weekly basis. Is any of that made public? That you're aware of?
Mr. Board Chair and Board Member, no, I don't think that we have any type of public, but it is available there, so any type of reports we can prepare for the board or for the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so some of the questions that I have is, and you kind of touched upon it, I just kind of want to reiterate, is that a lot of the work the National Guardsmen are doing is more behind the scenes versus being out in the community. Is that correct?
Mr. Board Chair, that's a great question. They are very much out, not behind the scenes, but they are out on the scenes. But of course, our very first priority is their safety, of course, right? So we're making sure that, I'll give an example of field operations, they're not being introduced into any type of active scene that has not been secured or deemed safe, right? But a lot of times, whether if it's a tactical activation or if it's a homicide call out, scene security is an essential. We need to have scene security to maintain chain of custody of evidence and safety for the civilian personnel and, of course, the sworn personnel that are going to be processing those scenes. So historically, prior to this initiative, we would have to utilize police officers, combination of police officers and public police service aides to maintain those scene integrities, right? And I can tell you for a tactical activation, we may utilize up to 5 or 6 police officers to hold those outer perimeter positions, right? That's 5 or 6 police officers now that can go back in service to take calls for service. So we're working on our response times. We're giving the officers more ability to have the time to be proactive and to hit those high crime areas and to do proactive work. So, again, just to conclude, I wouldn't necessarily say for the field mission that they're behind the scenes, but definitely for like the shield work. I mean, the professional staff personnel that are assigned to the shield unit are behind the scenes, but again, they're performing the much needed legwork that we need for, prosecutions on criminal cases.
Are you guys crunching the numbers from ROI and ROE on the National Guard deployment and like the money saved versus spent and kind of the impact to the community, both tangibly and intangibly? If that question makes sense.
Mr. Chair, Board Chair, the way I'm understanding that question is, for me, looking at the amount of hours that we're saving on a weekly basis, so it's about 1,200, if we say about 1,200 hours a month, and if we times that by the salary of a patrolman first class or a patrolman second class, in my mind, that kind of shows us, the impact of fiscally of how much the city of Albuquerque is benefiting. But then I also use another metric as well, just to see the impact. Are they having a successful impact when I look at the amount of productivity that our officers are able to have? And again, Chief Medina has been very vocal about this. This is the first time in several years where every crime category, when we're comparing a month, a 30-day, a 90-day, and a year-to-date comparison to previous time periods or the previous year, where every single crime category is down, and we look at misdemeanor arrests, felony arrests, and felony warrants, all of those proactive activities are up. Those are kind of the two metrics that I look at, is how much money we're saving in salary by using the officer's hourly wage and how many hours the National Guardsmen are putting in each week / month, and the productivity that the officers are able to have.
Oh, no, yeah, that you kind of answered my return on expectations, right, of that uncalculable advantage of all that stuff. Another question that I have is, well, let's first touch on the reports, right, because it's been 14 weeks, and so I'm hoping to see more of a, since you guys have those, the analytics behind it and the reporting, I'd like to see some of that stuff of, impact, reduction in reduction in response times for calls for service, and seeing some of that more tangible impacts from a data perspective. I think that would help us and the community too, right? Because this goes into my second question, but it is kind of blended, is we all know the current political administration is deploying National Guard to other larger cities. Ours is already kind of deployed, so there still might be some insecurity, I would say, and maybe some just need a little bit more clarity of what the National Guard is doing here within the city, right, for the community. Because I think that's going to be something that people more want to see. So from a reporting and then from all that other stuff. So does that kind of make sense with kind of the request for more data and report outs about the National Guard deployment?
I agree. The more transparency, the better it's going to be for all of us, I believe.
Mr. Board Chair and Board Member, the data is there. It's collected both on the National Guard side and also on our side by our Crime Analysis and Real-Time Crime Center. As far as it being easy to read, sometimes I don't understand a little bit of it because I just don't have that. But the data is there, so I'm very confident that we can definitely put it into a more user-friendly format just to show the impact that they're having and the numbers as far as hours, and again, explaining all the missions and initiatives that we have them plugged into, how that is having an impact. So we could definitely put that together.
Yeah, no, I would really like that. If one of your analysts and yourself wants some help to try to identify how to do some of that calculations and how to put out those metrics, I volunteer as tribute to kind of help kind of talk through it and go, okay, here's what I would want to see that's more public and more, because I think the number one thing, and from the conference, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? I don't even know. 2 weeks ago was transparency to the public, right? The more we can put this information out to the community and the public, the happier people will be, right? And I think that's what was the basic main theme of the conference. So, board members, any other questions or comments? No. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Board
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, Executive Director McDermott.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to say is if you want to go ahead and send me an email of what exactly you want to see, then I can get that forwarded to the major, and that way you can get the things covered that you want. So.
I don't know the data that they have available, so
No, I
it's
understand,
hard.
but just the questions, like, these are the things you'd like to hopefully see represented, and then I can send that to the major, and he can see, okay, we have data on this, or we don't have data on this, and kind of lay it out for you, instead of this sort of more amorphous here, so that it's just more clear for them, so they know what to get you, what you want. So, that'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just trying to struggle because I don't know what data they do have, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the request is so broad. And so maybe it might be that we see the initial report that they do have already created and then pull data from there, so it makes it easier for you guys to be able to create something more publicly faced, I would say.
Did you have a report created, or?
Mr. Board Chair and Board Member, Executive Director. We have data, and to give you an example, it's broken down into, and again, focusing on hours. You know, how many hours, what are those hours spent on? For the field mission, it would be calls for service. How many man hours into calls for service, and what type of calls? So I could provide, like, these are the type of calls that they responded to. These are how many hours they spent on scene. This is how many guards member were on that scene. I could definitely provide data like that. And then as far as the prisoner transport mission, how many individuals that were placed under arrest and transported to the Metropolitan Detention Center, how many individuals were processed under intake that they assisted with? And kind of the same with like SHIELD, we could see how many cases they've been working on.
Well, yes, that's very helpful, but another question that I would have specifically around the arrest in downtown is, when the National Guard helps, does that reduce the amount of wait time for those officers to complete that booking for the prisoner transportation, right? That's more of that in-depth analysis that I'm kind of looking at. And so I don't know what's available. I can put my questions down to Executive Director McDermott's point. I can put my questions down into an email, but I would still like maybe a conversation to kind of see what other things are possible, because I don't know what I don't know, and I think that's what's really hard, is when we're looking for it, it's something that might be applicable to us, might not even be applicable to you guys, and we might just be asking for something that doesn't even exist. We don't know. Or it's like, oh, we don't collect that exact metric, here's this metric. And how do we calculate? All that stuff does matter to me because I'm a nerd, but I can at least put my questions down, so at least we can start with a conversation there, if that works.
Yeah, I just was thinking to make it a little easier, because, you know, so that you can articulate, this would be really nice to know this, and then we can send it to the department can say, yes, we collect data on this, and here's what we got, or no, we don't collect this, you know,
Yep.
and then,
Nope.
so that
Yeah.
just it would be easier for the communication, I think, than just the questions here.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. Yep, thank you, Executive Director. All right, thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Board Chair, board members, thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to go a little bit of out of order, because I can speak today. And so for GovTV, we're going back to public comment, because I believe we do have the public commenter here, Miss Elena Rubenfeld. Is that correct? Oh. So, Ms. Rubenfeld, just as a FYI, when we turn it over, you have about 3 minutes for your public
Yes,
comment.
I'm aware.
And then we can go from, cool,
Okay,
awesome. Ms. Earl, do you have a timer, I assume? Cool, all right.
okay.
Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Elena Rubenfeld. I'm a resident of Albuquerque, and I am here to request that you make a simple but important change to APD policy. Please require APD to alert schools when a shooting occurs nearby. This policy would require APD to make one phone call that would make our schools significantly safer from gun violence and associated trauma. I found out this policy apparently does not exist because my child's school, Dolores Gonzalez Elementary School, was hit by bullets a few weekends ago. 9 windows were damaged, including windows in my son's kindergarten classroom. APD knew of the shooting via ShotSpotter. Even though the shooting happened early Sunday morning, the school did not learn about the shooting until they returned from the Labor Day holiday on Tuesday morning, and teachers discovered bullet holes in their windows, in their classrooms. Students were due to arrive soon. In hopes of sparing the kids the knowledge of what had happened, school leadership scrambled to relocate classes. Still, law enforcement needed, of course, to investigate the crime, so numerous law enforcement officers were in school during school hours. Teachers and the school administration were left to navigate how to explain their presence to students. I want to say first that I'm deeply moved and not at all surprised that DG's teachers and administration showed unbelievable selflessness and resourcefulness in a moment that was surely personally traumatic for them. Yet the truth is, those acts of selflessness were totally unnecessary. And that's why I'm here, because I am angry. As a parent, I am very angry. Our school could have known about this gunfire 48 hours earlier, when APD was first alerted. With that notice, school leadership would have checked the school, sparing teachers unnecessary trauma of finding bullet holes in their windows. School leadership would have been spared the stressful experience of trying to move numerous classrooms. Law enforcement could have investigated before students showed up to school. On Tuesday, my 5-year-old left kindergarten confused. From his car seat, he asked me what those things that looked like spiders on the windows of his classroom were. I honestly can't believe I have to be here advocating for this. I was shocked and horrified to learn that APD does not have an SOP that mandates that APD communicate with the school regarding ShotSpotter notifications or shootings nearby. I know APD understands that violence is most effectively addressed as a community. You need this policy to reflect that value. Please require APD to ensure that schools are aware when a nearby shooting occurs. This is an easy and effective step towards preventing trauma and violence in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rubenfeld. Thank you for that. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I'm going to actually request the policy subcommittee take this up and kind of review it and see what we can do to work with APD on that.
Great. How do I stay in touch with them to see what happens?
Do you mind leaving your contact information with Ms. Barela?
Yeah.
And then she'll provide it to us, and then we'll reach out once we do have a meeting, probably next month for that one?
Next month?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
should
we
I
can
come
give
to
you-
that?
Yes.
Okay, all
We'll
right.
let
thank
you know prior to it, just so you have enough time to compile whatever you need to compile that can help us. But as well, just provide her the information, and we'll be able to be in touch, okay?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Calderon. All right. With that, we will continue on to the next order of business, which will go back to APD, Internal Affairs Professional Standards Report.
Good afternoon, early evening, Chair and honorable board members. My name is Paul Scotch-DePaul. I'm the acting commander of the Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division. Commander Ryan Nelson is out on a much-needed vacation, and he will be returning next week, so you'll probably see him at the next meeting. I am here to answer any questions you may have regarding the monthly report that was sent out. I believe you've all received a copy of that regarding the Internal Affairs Professional Standards Division that covers the cases that were open, completed, the number of pending cases, and all of the SOPs that were either sustained or not sustained. I stand before you for any questions that you may have.
Board, do you guys have any questions? The one bit of feedback I would like to, again, suggest is back on page 5, kind of on the bottom right-hand, more of the 1.1 personal code of conduct allegations. Because on the directive, it says like all the different sub-policies. I was wondering if there's a way to put in what those, like a brief segment or snippet of what that area falls at, like I'm making this up. I don't even know if this exists. Like being rude versus not showing up on time, or just some ways to kind of break it out versus just a policy number or
Yeah,
the
for
subheader.
those-
I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to at least ask that question again to maybe just better group them up a little bit to make it more digestible of kind of what that is versus the numbers.
Versus just the 1-1.
Yeah.
Because those of you who sat on the policy board, you know that 1-1 is an extensive policy
It's
covering all
very
the
big.
conduct. And
Yeah.
so when it's reported in that manner, I can talk to Dr. Valier, who compiles this report, to see if on that particular page we can actually put the subsection for each one of them.
Yeah.
And that may be more helpful to you. I don't think it'll be able to define it exactly.
No, I don't want that. I'm more just high level, just as that sub policy heading, right? That's more generic, right? Because I don't want to go too deep because that's going to defeat the whole purpose. More of just
Sure.
a general.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I will go ahead and pass that concern on to Dr. Valier and see maybe if we can get this updated a little bit.
And then another question here, is there a way we could kind of start doing like a trend analysis over a running 12 to 18 month period of the top 5 sustained findings in some of the code of conducts, right? So then we're just kind of tracking the trends. Because if we see it, if there's not a trend analysis, we can't see that and go, oh, this is starting to get disturbing. We only see one of, but now we get to see a trend analysis. I'm sure you guys have that data. I'm just looking to see that data.
Yeah, I don't have it. Dr. Valier would have the opportunity to do that. They get the reports that through IA Pro, they're able to glean information off of sustained charges, not sustained charges and whatnot. They do have like the top 5, OBRD, things like that.
Right.
But it could be like, maybe we're seeing a trend where, it's under the OBRD, the on-body recording device subsection, but maybe it's because they didn't upload in time, and there's a trend in that you could see is why are they not uploading within a certain amount of time? I can also pass that on to him as well to see if we could get some sort of a data analysis, whatever period you would like. In particular, that you were looking for specific trends, things that are trending with regards to SOP violations.
Right. I think it's more just we don't know the trends and we're not keeping, it's hard to know a trend unless we kind of dive deeper.
Right.
And we just want to if something's going down the rabbit hole, we want to head it off. Like you guys would want to too, right? So this way we can partner a little bit more together to go, hey, did you see this? Is this weird to you? Yeah, okay, let's.
Yeah, and we want to help you accomplish that. I mean, I know you're charged under your ordinance in identifying trends and things that are happening within the department as far as misconduct and those sorts of things. So we want to definitely help you get that information. Wonderful. So I will talk to Dr. Valier about it and see if we can maybe prepare something for you. I'll meet with Diane and talk a little bit more with her on it, and maybe we can even include Dr. Valier on that and see how we can get that information to you.
Wonderful, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. All right. Next order of business is APD report on Internal Affairs Force Division.
Good evening. Total force events for August of 2025. Grand total was 54 force events. That is actually a decrease of just about 5 force events from July, so there was a slight decrease in our use of force, uses of force that we were involved in. Southeast, as usual, had the most uses of force at 19, with the Northeast coming in second at 11, and then the Valley at 10. If you'll remember last month that the Northeast also, actually the Northeast was higher than the Southeast last month, but the Northeast is still trending a little bit high. One thing that we're seeing is unfortunately a bit of displacement with some of the individuals that we're running into in the Southeast. They're kind of going across freeway to the Northeast, but still kind of engaging in the same type of activity, we're having to make arrests or get in force events. Force rate per 1,000 calls, northeast and southeast were exactly the same at 2.0. So every 1,000 calls, we were involved in two of those calls involved the use of force, with the valley at 1.5 calls. Force rate per arrest, northeast actually was the highest this month in 3.4 uses of force per 100 arrests, and second was southeast. Foothills was actually third, where Foothills doesn't really show up on the map in terms of having a lot of uses of force, but as far as kind of proportionally for that month, they had a relatively high use of force rate per 100 arrests. Not relatively high, just higher than what you would expect. The age range still hasn't changed. We're still seeing the majority of our uses of force between the ages of 30 and 39. And then 14 for 20, between the ages of 20 and 29. So about double the uses of force for individuals between 30 and 39. Behavioral health involved, 31% of our reported uses of force had to do with somebody who was having a behavioral health crisis or mental health crisis. And 20% were just unknown. Alcohol or drugs, over half of our uses of force were with individuals that were under the influence of a narcotic or alcohol. It was about 54%. Still, empty hand techniques is the majority of the force that we use on the department. In the month of August, we did have 2 officer-involved shootings. The majority of our calls where we're getting in use of force events are going to be suspicious persons, suspicious vehicle calls, as well as disturbances. And as far as completed cases, our level 1 team, they had just completed 8 cases last month. Minimum days to completion was about 10, and maximum days to completion was 17. For our level 2 and 3 uses of force, we completed 32 completed investigations. The average days was around 80, and the minimum days of completion was 18. Maximum was 108 days. Out of last month, this stat may not necessarily reflect what happened in August. Reason being is because our investigations, right, either last between 90 and 120 days, right? So, when those cases that when we close those cases out in August, that can be a reflection of what occurred 3 months prior, or within those 3 months. And we found 2 uses of force that were out of policy, and both of those uses of force were in the Valley Area Command. And I will stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Okay.
The one question that I do have, because it's September, and I remembered you guys are going to, hopefully next month, talk about the shows of force or displays of force. How is that coming along? Are we still kind of looking for next month, or how?
The go live date on that is going to be September 20th.
Yeah.
So right now we're still calling shows of force, uses of force until September 20th.
Okay.
So you probably won't see a reflection of that change probably until November, an accurate reflection of that.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to, I knew it was September, so I just want to remind myself. So, awesome. Thank you, Commander.
Sure.
The next order of business is a report from ACS by Deputy Director Jeffrey Bustamante.
Almost went to the wrong microphone. Good evening, everybody. Excited to be here again to go through our updates. I'll get our August report sent over as soon as it's done. We're close, it just not quite as much, and I feel like this one's a little bit earlier in the cycle. But as far as just big updates about the department, from the field division, we had our highest calls for service in July that we've ever had, which was 4,600 calls. A significant jump up. We had been about, I think, around 4,000 prior to that. So not a huge surprise. You know, I always talk about how things go up in the summer, but the one thing that I think it keys into is an answer to a question we get a lot, which is, where is diminishing return? How many behavioral health responders can you hire to get to all the calls? And one thing we've seen over our now 4 years, we just celebrated our 4th birthday, is that whenever we're putting more responders into the field, we're getting more calls. I think there's a few things influencing that. Some of it is awareness of us. Some of it is, especially as we're clearing the board, we're getting to more calls than the rest. But it was not a surprise to see a new high number for July, but it was still pretty significant. So 4,600. Outside of that, we continue with our Connect to Care events and a handful of other really outreaches, especially from our street outreach team, who is really working with local area commanders along with a diversified strategy for outreach to get to the highest acuity individuals who are unsheltered in specific areas. A lot of our work has been downtown and southeast for the obvious reasons so far, so working with like Commander Richards to try and get those individuals into sustainable housing. From the first 80 individuals that they interacted with, and this program's only a handful of months old, but from the first 80 that they interacted with, 64 were successfully housed, and of those, only 5 have backslid. So, and what they do is they step through it with them and they support them and try and make sure that they become stabilized medically and behaviorally, and then use that to pivot into the rest, to housing and the rest. From our violence prevention division, yeah, things continue. We have now expanded to Del Norte, which I think I mentioned last month as well, but we're off and running there. We have our school based in 4 schools now. We also have our youth violence team that has received over 30 referrals. These are for the kids slipping through the cracks. We might not be getting to them in school, so we all know that some kids just stop going entirely. So when we have some sort of flag and referrals come from APD, from APS's threat assessment team, from any number of folks, that we can get to them there and try and hopefully get them re-engaged in school, but most importantly stabilized in the household, and then the school tends to come after that. Our OEP division continues to fly. They get a lot of referrals at any, or not division, but OEP team continues to get a lot of referrals, and just overall the violence intervention division is hard at work. Finally, our summer of nonviolence is continuing. We have an event here on Saturday. We partnered with Councillor Champagne to do an event at Holiday Park Community Center there at right around Tramway and Comanche, or Wantabo and Comanche, right in that area. And we will be doing a 3-on-3 basketball event. We are partnering with Kenny Thomas, the former Lobo, on that one. That's here on Saturday. Not too late to sign up if you guys want to. You could have a CPC team, I'm just saying. It'll be perfect. We're gonna have free food. We're gonna have one of those huge 100-foot like bounce obstacle courses. A lot of fun. So really excited to get up into an area that we haven't done a lot of our summer and nonviolence events in. And it really prompts us for an exciting time because we are also partnering with Councillor Rogers and Commissioner Barboa for their International Fest coming up at the end of this month on the 27th, that Saturday, and then pivoting into our year of nonviolence. So we have now announced that we will be doing this sort of programming year round. Some of our existing events will couple into it, like our trunk or treat and our holiday party, but we'll also be bringing some new events to the community and trying to get to every single city council district, but fundamentally every single major area of town, bringing, again, fun, safe, things like that. As an example, one thing we're looking at is we had a dance here here across the road at the convention center. It was pretty successful, but one of the big areas of feedback we got was folks didn't necessarily want to drive downtown, even if it's, a pretty quick drive on the weekend. They would have really appreciated a dance more in their neighborhoods. So we're finding event space in kind of the quadrants of town that we can bring that to and have those in those areas. So a lot of programming to come, but really exciting for us and happy to answer any questions on any of it.
Questions?
I might have misheard Major Langwick's report, but are you getting any support from the National Guard?
So Major Langwick alluded to it. We don't have active interaction with them, but there is incidental interaction, and of course they know who we are, we know who they are, and we've worked really hard to make sure that we're capacity builders to one another when that happens. We're not necessarily doing operations together, but as you might imagine, when things come up and we're a flavor of that response from the city, there is some overlap sometimes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yeah, no questions.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next order of business is the report from the City Attorney's Office by Lindsay Rosenberg.
Good evening, Mr. Board and board members, Mr. Chair. Lindsay Rosenberg from the City Attorney's Office. These new microphones. My update tonight is fairly limited. Last month, there was a recommendation related to training and policy on inventory searches. I just wanted to update the board that additional changes are being made to that policy to ensure it is in line with the current case law. Some of those changes have already went into effect last month. And so we do appreciate the CPOA's review of that and some of the recommendations that they gave. And the training that has been going on right now, again, in the MOE by the DA's office has been very thorough related to that, the case law changes in those areas. Those are all the updates that I have tonight, but if there are any questions that you may have, any questions policy related as well, when we get into the policy scope of the evening, I will remain for questions as well. And if there is anything in the future that the board, I know my updates in the past have been very specific to CASA. We are obviously not in the CASA any longer, and so I don't have any updates specific to that. But if there's anything that the board is looking for specific from the City Attorney's Office, any particular legal updates, I would be happy to hear so I can prepare it for any future meetings.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next order of business is the report from City Council by Chris Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Board. Chris Sullivan, Albuquerque City Council. I only have one update. We've completed the interviews for the future board member, and so we have 2 names that we're going to pass on to the counselors. Hopefully that will happen by the end of the month, that we'll get the counselors to interview the person, and then they'll pick who they want. We both, the agency, the contract compliance officer, CCO, and myself really liked the candidates that we saw. So it's up to the council now to decide who they want to pick. I can't really give a timeline because of the way the council process works. I will try to estimate if we interview folks and the counselors pick somebody, say by the end of the month, I would write up the legislation, have it introduced the first council meeting October. That would go to holdover, which would skip a committee, which is great. And then probably by the end of October, that could be when the person is confirmed. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. All right, next order of business is a report from the Community Policing Council, CPC, by Mr. Kelly Metza.
We had a nice month, I should say, with the council. We got our new audio system in, which is something we've been working on for months now. And we got the equipment, set it up in a couple of meetings, and people say, I can hear the difference. They send me emails during the meeting. So without me even saying we got anything new, they're saying, oh, did you change something? I think that's a positive step. So, you know, we're getting better opportunities. We're going to send more meetings out for people to watch, and that was probably one of our biggest complaints about online meetings. These are 4 wireless microphones that plug into a mixing board and plug into the computer and the whole thing. So it's a little more setup time, but it works pretty well. We also have the date for our year-end dinner. That's going to be December 6th at the Albuquerque Museum. Last year's dinner, we had over 70 people, so it was a pretty good turnout. I'm looking for a couple of people to speak about community policing and what the Community Policing Council is and what it can do. We're going to look into finalizing this event this month. Let's see, we're getting closer with our advertising. There's a lot of stuff the city needs as far as crossing T's and dotting I's. We are planning on advertising, sponsoring the news on PBS and also on KKOB. So we get a good cross-section of the public hearing about the Community Policing Council. We're hoping to get both of these done sometime at the end of this month or in October. We're almost there. I got some nice sunshades for the counselors. They're about that big, and they have the CPC logo, and they have all the information on it. So hopefully some people walking by will see this and say, "What's that?" and send me some emails. The chief is doing his rounds of speech this month for the council. He's going to hit all 7 councils within the next couple of weeks before the balloon fiesta starts. So that's going to be a good deal. He's touched on his most important areas, which are recruiting, and he's, announced it again. The CASA is over, and we're self-monitoring now, and also the numbers of officers, and some movement around the department. And he's talked on a lot of other things, like giving his personal opinion on juvenile crime and on not having bail, not charging bail anymore, and a lot of stuff. So we've had good conversation about this. The biggest event I did over the past month was the gun buyback down in the University District at the University Substation. They gave away about $30,000 buying guns that day, so it was a good turnout. Dozens of cars, I'm not sure how many, but we gave away probably 60 to 70 brochures and spoke to people about the council. We've had a couple of people sign up for the Zoom registration through this, so that worked out pretty well. And this weekend, I'm going to attend the event hatching, try to meet some more people. We've had 4 applications in the last month, which is highly unusual. It's been a while since we got that. And we've got 2 new members so far, and looking to get the other 2 signed, and with our advertising and all that, get our numbers back up. We've got between 3 and 9 members of each council now, so there are a few councils that are right on the edge of not going that well, but I've gone alternating months with the councils. It's split in half. That was the Southeast and the University. One goes one month, one goes the next month, so hopefully people attend both. And with that, that's pretty much my report this month. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Metsa. Any questions? Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, the next order of business is a report from the mayor's office by Mr. Doug Small. All right, then we're moving on to the next order of business, report by the CPOA by Executive Director Diane McDermott.
Thank you, Chair. So the CPOA received 74 complaint intakes from August 1st, 2025 to August 31st. 28 were assigned for investigation between CPOA and those already with IA. 28 were driving complaints. 4 were resolved with supervisors involving ECC or executive staff, and then 1 was assigned for mediation. And then 13 were miscellaneous as, again, insufficient information, or the complaint was resolved because they just were seeking some kind of information. We did have a high month this night, which is great. Of 10 commendations were received in the month of August. A couple other things. The SWAT training and presentation will be at the CPOA office on November 3rd at 10 a.m. The goal is to provide information that will aid in the evaluation of use of force cases by SWAT. Please provide a list of questions and topics that the board would like to make sure are covered. So we've said that before, but just as they're working through finalizing this, if you can give me the details so that the commander can make sure that's addressed. Regarding the issue that was raised last month concerning an MOU between the city and the APOA, the board has already been provided with that communication and the next steps that are going to be moving forward. And then the final is staffing processes are ongoing within the agency. We have several different interviews and postings that are happening. That's about it. I stand for any questions on that.
Any questions?
Well, I'll move on to then the next piece, which is the non-concurrences. And these are slightly unusual in that the 2 non-concurrences are very closely tied to the same issue, so I'm just going to cover them both pretty much at the same time. So the initial SOP cited for both of these, the issue involves the practice of police service aides seizing license plates from cars parked on roadways. And the initial SOP cited for both of these cases was 115C2, and the statement of that SOP is department personnel shall not act officiously, abuse their lawful authority, or permit their personal feelings, animosities, or friendships to influence their official decisions. The language particularly relevant here is the abuse their lawful authority. Sometimes, just for the board and public's knowledge, is sometimes SOP selections are not perfect fits, but because the SOP regarding these seizures specifically identified sworn personnel, this was kind of the best choice of the utilization of their authority. So during the interviews for both of these cases, the PSAs claimed that they were trained this way, not provide the specifics to where this training came from. The indications that this training did not originate from formal training that the PSAs receive. Instead, it looks like it's from field training PSAs who've been basically passing along this information, albeit incorrect information. In one of these cases, one of the PSAs indicated that he's seen officers perform that task. So we took that information into consideration when we were doing these investigations. We still felt that there was this concern that the PSA has this responsibility to know their limitations. There's nothing in policy that said to do this action. After these cases were submitted to the Professional Integrity Unit, the commanders who had conducted additional research within the department further discussed the matter and concluded that there was a pervasive practice within the department. The original discussion that we had then was to switch possibly the SOP to the PSAs basically failing to document the seizure under a 2-16 type of SOP, and then essentially sustain the department for the problematic practice that they have allowed to perpetuate. Some timing came through where the letters to the citizen had been sent, so we said go ahead and do this as non-concurrence of either exonerating this, and then we sustain on the other. It turned out that the non-concurrence came through instead as a not sustained for the PSAs, and then the additional SOP was not added regarding the documentation. The department stated that there is a question as to who the actual owner of the plate is. We've had these types of cases before. The research we have done into similar issues is the state statute gives the authority to MVD to seize improper plates, but doesn't specifically extend to other entities. Sworn personnel could certainly be argued to have that authority, but as we are showing, non-sworn do not. The finding of not sustained, like I say, is a little bit confusing because of that. But basically the assumption is that whether it belongs to the PSAs or not. Ultimately, our goal is to improve the department and change behaviors. We're not, interested in imposing discipline only if it, makes some adjustment to the behavior. So the department has stated that its non-concurrence memos and the practice of PSAs removing license plates has been corrected with the department, and that's the ultimate goal. So that's where we sit with these.
Wonderful, thank you, Executive Director. Any questions? No, all right. Thank you much. All right, so next order of business is the appeal, and this will be for CPC 33827. So before we proceed, I would like legal counsel to explain again to the board and to the appellant the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're now at the appeals portion of the agenda, and the following process will be followed. During the appeal hearing, each interested party has an opportunity to be heard and present arguments stating their position. No new evidence will be permitted to be introduced during the appeal hearing. The appeal hearing today is a quasi-judicial hearing, and the decisions will be made by the members of this board. The scope of this appeal will be limited to the complaint and the findings of the investigation that followed. If parties during their presentation go outside of this scope, they may be directed by the chair that the only arguments that will be considered by the board are those relating to the complaint and subsequent investigation. We are recording this meeting tonight so that a complete, clear record can be created of everything being said. However, please remember that we cannot create an accurate record with people talking over one another. If people start to talk over each other or interrupt, the chair may call for order so that there can be a clear record of the hearing. The time limits for the hearing are as follows: 15 minutes for the appellant who requested the appeal or their representative. They may call witnesses, but this will count against their time. 10 minutes for the CPOA director or designee, 5 minutes for the police officer if he or she is present, 10 minutes for APD, and then 5 minutes for the complainant or representative to provide a short rebuttal to anything that has been presented by the other parties. The burden of proof is upon the complainant bringing the appeal to demonstrate either 1, a policy was misapplied in the evaluation of the complaint, or 2, that the findings or recommendations of the director were arbitrary, capricious, or constituted an abuse of discretion, or 3, that the findings and recommendations of the director were not consistent with the record evidence. These are the only bases upon which the board may modify or change the findings or recommendations of the director. At the end of each party's presentation, the board will be given an opportunity to ask questions. These questions do not count against the party's presentation time. The questions should be focused on clarifying the record or the argument given and should not offer or invite new information or evidence from a board member through asking the questions. The parties shall remain respectful and professional during their presentations. Any disruption of another party's presentation shall not be tolerated. At the close of the hearing, the board will deliberate. The board may make a determination in open session or decide to deliberate in closed session as allowed by the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. All final decisions by the board will be made in public. Once a decision is made, a final written notice of decision will be provided to all interested parties as provided for in the CPOA ordinance.
Thank you, Council. Mr. Sherwood, do you want to step up? Yes. So, as Council said, you have 15 minutes, and Ms. Brillo will be counting your time, and you'll see the timer up on the screen. Sorry?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Ms. Segala will be.
Oh, sorry.
The Zoom, that's okay.
I'm just using it. Sorry. Sorry. All right. So, Mr. Sherwood, your time starts now.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you all for allowing me for this time to express my appeal. On July 13th, 2024, at approximately 1:20 p.m., my friend Bill Nelson and I were demonstrating on Central Avenue in front of Cold Stone Creamery located at 3222 Central Southeast here in Albuquerque. I sent you all a link to a video. I hope some of you have watched it. My friend Bill was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, and he was holding a sign that said "Lock Trump Up." I was sitting on the toolbox of my truck holding a sign saying "Peace is patriotic." Then a black SUV pulled up and a shouting match began. The driver exited the vehicle, walked around the back of his vehicle, and threw a whiskey bottle at my friend Bill, but missed and hit me in my right shin. I sprayed him with a can of mace in defense. He went back to his vehicle and then threw a plastic drink container at us. I sprayed him with mace again, and then he left. But a few minutes later, he returned and crashed into the tailgate of my '94 Chevy pickup truck and pushed it into the vehicle in front of me. He backed up and appeared to intend to crash into my truck again a second time when I produced a pistol and pointed at him. He stopped and then drove away. If my friend Bill hadn't rolled over backwards, his legs would have been crushed. There were several witnesses. A young man called the police. A young woman took pictures of the SUV and got his license plate number. Some police arrived and investigated the incident. Officer Zane Montgomery gave me his card with case number 8034. Around 7:11 p.m., Detective Gerald Cummings of the APD called and asked some questions. At 8:55 p.m., Officer Hazelton came to my unit.
Sir, we're going to pause you for a quick second. Sorry, counsel.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to remind everyone not to use the officers' names in their presentation. That is.
Yes, thank you, counsel.
That's what the appeal is about.
Correct. So, Mr. Sherwood, the point is we can refer to the officers, but we just don't want to say their full names, first and last. So you can refer to them as officer or detective and use the first initial of their last name, but not their full name, just for.
Okay, Officer all right. Officer Z. Montgomery gave me his card around 7:11.
Sir, when we're saying officer, it's Officer M or Detective C. Just for privacy, please.
Officer Montgomery, okay, around 7:11 p.m. Detective Cummings of the.
Sir, please do not say the full. Don't say the name, please. At all. Is that clear?
No, it isn't clear. I'm filing an appeal against it.
Sir, we are aware of the officers' names, so we're fully aware of them. So when we ask you to say not their names, we ask you to say Officer S, Detective S. This is the reason we do this for privacy of these officers, a part of this appeal. So we ask that you follow the rules that we set in place, or we will end the appeal.
So I'm supposed to say Detective C?
Yes, sir. Correct.
All right. Detective C of the APD called and asked some more questions. Around 8:55 p.m., Officer H came to my unit and showed me some pictures. I identified someone who resembled the driver. My shin was badly bruised, so I went to Dr. Carolyn Castillo, can I say that? And I had my leg x-rayed on July the 17th. It wasn't broken, but a bone bruised. But I had a bone bruise that took 3 months to heal. I had to use a walker for a week and a cane for 2 months. Estimate for the repairs of my truck exceeded $3,000. I sent copies of the estimates to Detective C and the pictures of the damage to my truck and pictures of my wounded leg. I had a number of phone conversations with Detective C, who assured me it was a high priority case. We both assumed the assailant was out of town or out of state. My last conversation with Detective C was November 29th of 2024. He didn't have any new information. A friend of mine suggested I get a copy of the police report, so I did. It had a list of all the witnesses and the assailant, Eric Camden, his address, and his vehicle type. On December 3, 2024, after working out at a local community center, I decided to drive by Eric Camden's house. I saw Eric Camden's vehicle in the driveway. I had no intention of confronting the assailant. I was 77 years old, blind in one eye, and I'm not stupid. I just wanted to determine if Mr. Camden was in town. I immediately called Detective C to tell him to have someone to go arrest Eric Camden. He didn't answer, so I left him a voicemail. Then I called the APD and asked them to have someone go arrest Eric Camden. So after I received a call from an Officer Lance, who told me the vehicle in the driveway was Eric Camden's, but he couldn't arrest Camden because there was no warrant for his arrest, and I should call the district attorney. The district attorney told me there was no warrant because they had no police report on Eric Camden. Then I received a voicemail from Detective C scolding me for driving by Eric Camden's house, and it's not my place to take the law into my own hands and he didn't know how I got all the information on Eric Camden. You know, this is the United States of America. I have a driver's license. I have the right to drive anywhere I want. If I hadn't driven by Eric Camden's house, he would have never been arrested. Detective C had the police report on Eric Camden, so he had his address. Why didn't he have someone drive by Eric Camden's house? He's the detective. On December 4th, 2024, at 1 p.m., I spoke to Officer M and asked why the police report on Eric Camden wasn't turned in to the district attorney. Officer M told me he had given the police report to Detective C. At 1:30 the same day, I received a call from someone with a female voice telling me I'm not supposed to drive by Eric Camden's house and the feds might be involved. You know, to me, this was clear intimidation. The same day, I received a text from Detective C, stating the suspect cannot be apprehended. I still have that text on my phone. Of course the suspect couldn't be apprehended because there was no warrant for his arrest. There was no warrant because Detective C never gave the police report on Eric Camden to the district attorney. On December 9th, I sent a letter to Jessica Goddity of TV station KRQE and told her my story. On December 17th, 2024, I received a phone call from Jessica Goddity, and I told her my story. She called the APD and they assured her the police record on Eric Camden would be delivered to the district attorney that day. The next morning, I called the district attorney and was told they still didn't have the police record on Eric Camden. So I called Jessica Goddity and left her a message. She called me back and said she would follow up. At 2 p.m. on December 19th, 2024, I received a call from Jason Greenlee of the district attorney's office informing me he finally had the police report on Eric Camden. That was 5 months after the assault took place. On January 7th, I received a call from Jason Greenlee at the DA's office stating the grand jury was meeting on January 31, 2025, and hopefully a warrant would be issued for Eric Camden's arrest. Eric Camden was arraigned on February 17th and should go to trial on October of 2025. What seems clear to me, for whatever reason, Detective C is protecting Eric Camden. If I hadn't driven by Eric Camden's house and written a letter to Jessica Goddity of station KRQE, Eric Camden would have never been arrested. I originally filed a complaint with the CPOA on Detective C on December 30th, 2024. In the next few months, I had a few conversations with Aaron McKay of the CPOA, but didn't get any real response until July 23rd of 2025, and it claimed nobody did anything wrong. I can't accept that. It was wrong for Detective C not to turn over the police report on Eric Camden for 5 months. If I didn't take any decisive action, I'm confident Detective C would never have given Eric Camden's police report to the DA. Eric Camden is a violent criminal who belongs in prison. The police get paid to arrest violent criminals, not protect them. It was wrong for somebody in Detective C's division to call me on the phone and try to intimidate me. To me, Detective C's actions amount to obstruction of justice, and he should be held accountable for his irresponsible actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherwood. CPOA Executive Director McDermott, do you want to use your 10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Your time starts. Huh?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, you can sit down. Sorry, we're going to continue the process. So yeah, you can sit down for now.
Okay.
We're going to go continue through the process, but please just sit down for us.
Okay, I'll sit down. Thank you again.
Executive Director McDermott, your time starts now.
All right. Yes, Mr. Sherwood had, as you've heard, said that the DA informed him that they did not have the report. We can't speak for what the DA office has said or didn't do or did or anything like that, but we have an email which was provided to the board and to Mr. Sherwood for the evidence here that provided the agency and part of the appeal that Detective C sent his case summary to the DA's office on October 12th of 24. This was before Mr. Sherwood reached out to the media. Again, we can't speak to whatever the DA's office told him. It's outside of our scope. We also have additional communication that occurred between the DA's office on 12/19, which is what he had said was after the day he had talked to the media. So we have October 12th, we have December 19th. We also have information that the SHIELD unit, which is the unit that helps prepare cases and things like that, had a communication with the DA's office on 9/24/24 with some of the preliminary reporting information. So this case was sent to the DA's long before the time that Mr. Sherwood believed it was. Early on, the detective did take initial statements from the case. This is very important to realize, there is no specific length of time that a case is mandated to take or investigate. There's no SOP that specifically says it will take 1 month, 5 months, whatever. The only thing that they have to be mindful of is the statute of limitations, basically. The detective took various steps to investigate this case. There was consistent work that we could see through the case that was submitted by Detective C. There were some challenges within the case that did delay some of the things. There was some additional developing of information that needed to be occurred. I can go through some of that. There were some concerns about photo arrays that Mr. Sherwood and the other individual had selected and identified the wrong individual on the photo array. There were some videos and obviously photos of the vehicle. So the vehicle was clearly identified as being present, but there was less clear information about who specifically. It's a matter of what you may know or what believe, but what can you prove? The detective explained that he did not have enough information to Mr. Sherwood on multiple occasions. I don't think Mr. Sherwood mentioned it so much here, but in his appeal letter to the board, he had talked about a lack of communication. There were multiple communications between the detective and Mr. Sherwood. Those were recorded, so there is the proof of that information. The detective took several steps to try and locate the vehicle. At the time, it was not located. Again, the detective also went through a cell phone data process to try and get location information. That is why they believed that he was out of the state, because the last ping they had was at an airport, and then the next ping was at a different state. They couldn't go beyond that in terms of, because the warrant, that was outside of the warrant scope to be tracking outside of the state. So all of this just highlights, there's quite a bit more, but highlights that a lot of information and investigation was going on during this time frame, but it was submitted prior to Mr. Sherwood going to the suspect's home. So some of what may have developed after is probably why an indictment finally was able to come to pass, but the information was already submitted to the DA. When there's this allegation that the detective is protecting the suspect, there is no evidence that was provided. There was none that was discovered that the detective was protecting the suspect in this case. Again, he never refused to send anything to the DA. It was sent to the DA. They do have multiple cases working at the same time. It's not the only case. There was, again, consistent work being shown, and it was submitted. So It was not just sitting on the case and doing nothing with it. In terms of the issue of the two detectives calling Mr. Sherwood when he went by the home, the first was a voicemail. It is again recorded. The detective did not scold him, but he did advise him not to interact or go by the suspect's home. It was cautionary. It was explaining for his safety and the integrity of the case to not go there. Mr. Sherwood, in his subsequent conversation with Detective A, had said he was cussed out. He was not cussed out by Detective C during that initial voicemail. He did talk to Detective A. Detective A, that detective's role is violence intervention, and her capacity is to prevent violence, basically. And so the concern was that there might be something that occurred. So again, in her role, she had simply called to advise for his safety, for the suspect's safety, for avoiding to compromise the case, to not go by the home. Her voice, again, was just firm, instructive. When he was interviewed by our office, Mr. Sherwood, he didn't articulate any specific statement or behavior. He just said that it was firm. And so and he considered that threatening. But when you objectively listen to it, there is not a violation there in terms of any kind of threatening behavior. It is, Mr. Sherwood's perception, basically. The final point I'll just raise is in terms of the case progress. I don't think he went into the specifics here, but Mr. Sherwood had alleged that the investigator informed him that the investigation would take 30 days. This is inaccurate. We have a recorded interview, of course, confirming that the investigator informed Mr. Sherwood the investigation could take up to 120 days. And then additionally, this case specifically was delayed because one of the target people was on FMLA. So that did delay the case even further. The case was completed within the time frame allowed between the FMLA and the actual investigation. And then there was a delay in the actual review. Reviews can take up to 40 days. This one took a little bit longer because of caseload. But again, it took slightly longer than normal, but this is well within the, I guess you'd say, tolerance allowed. And it was inaccurate that he was told only 30 days. I think that pretty much covers it. Just the final statement being is, again, no timetable for an investigation, no timetable of when to turn a case into the DA. It was fairly expedited given some of the challenges and the time frame that we have.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Any questions for Executive Director McDermott? Do we have a APD representative here? The officer, the detective is not here, but he's all right. So, for the record, we do not have the detectives here, but we do have an APD representative. So, sir, you have 10 minutes. Before we do that, or once you start, please just state your name for the record, and then we'll go. And your time starts now.
Okay. My name is Commander Henry Landavazo. I work for the Professional Integrity Division of the Albuquerque Police Department under the Police Reform Bureau. My role there in the Reform Bureau in the Professional Integrity Division is to review cases submitted to us by either the CPOA or the Use of Force Division or the IA Division. So we review the cases. In this case, there's two of us that review it initially. In this case, I reviewed it first. And for the benefit of the appellant, this is the procedure. We receive the case from the CPOA. We conduct an independent review, which I review the allegations and the SOP violations. And Detective C had 3 allegations alleged against him. One of them was 116C-1, which is roles and responsibilities. The other was 115A1, which is courtesy, respect, and professionalism. And the last SOP identified was 115C2, which is allowing personal feelings or animosities to interfere with the case. In this case, the CPOA unfounded all three SOP violations on Detective C. And on Detective A, she was charged with 115A1, and she was exonerated on that. I reviewed the case, and we reviewed it for completeness and fairness to the officer and both to the appellant, that the case was done impartially. And in this case, in reading it, I felt that it was. I reviewed all the evidence, all the videos, the write-ups, the information submitted to the DA's office. And in this case, it showed that, and I apologize to the appellant because he got a taste of the criminal justice system and how slow it works. Sometimes it's very slow, and in this case, it appears to be, this is one of them. The report was taken, and this is an anomaly, Detective C called him almost immediately right after the case. So that doesn't usually occur. A police officer takes a police report and they submit it to detectives, and detectives don't only have this one case, they have bunches of other cases that they're investigating, so they have to prioritize those cases. And Detective C called him and let him know he was going to get to the bottom of this. I think he made a statement in his statement that he would get the person that did this. So he worked on the case, as Detective or Ms. McDermott explained. He worked on it. He even showed a photo array of the suspect, and both the appellant and his witness were unable to identify the person. So this created a problem for the district attorney's office, as you have to have probable cause to make an arrest. And if you can't identify the offender, that creates a big issue for the DA's office. So, and then he also stated that he felt that when he found the vehicle there, he wanted officers to go out and arrest the guy. It doesn't work that way. You can't just go out and arrest the guy because there's an allegation that he did something. Although the evidence was there that he did do something, you have to actually prove that. But the identification was the main hurdle when the case was sent to the DA's office. You just can't get a warrant for somebody if you can't identify the person that did it. So when it was presented to the DA's office, the DA has to look at the report and take all the evidence and present it to a grand jury. You can't even, to get a warrant, an officer has to make a probable cause statement on a sworn affidavit to get an arrest warrant. In this case, if you can't identify it, then, so the alternative is present it to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney takes it to the grand jury. And this is what eventually happened, but all this takes time. So it may look like the detective was sitting on it and not doing anything, but he was. In addition to working his other cases, he was working this one. So eventually, the offender in this case was indicted, and I feel for the appellant because he was a victim by this person. However, the wheels of justice sometimes turn slow, and this is evident in this case. So I reviewed the case and I forwarded it to my colleague, Commander Sean Waite, who reviewed it also. We both concurred with the CPOA of the findings of unfounded on Detective C and exonerated for Detective A. Another thing I want to point out is that during the case that it was documented that Detective C was told to contact the DA supervisor directly rather than just making contact with the ADA. I don't know why that occurred, but there was an allegation that the federal agency might have been involved, and I don't know if that offender was being investigated and it was maybe hurting that federal case. I don't know. We don't know the details of that, but the detective was told to contact the DA supervisor only. So that leads me to believe that there's more to this story than, or even what the appellant knows, is that he could have been being investigated by a federal agency, and making contact with him could have hurt their case. So that's the only thing I could conclude, is that there was something else going on. I reviewed the case, Commander Waite reviewed the case, and we concurred with the CPOA findings. As the Detective C met the roles and responsibilities of his position, he, in his contacts that are recorded, where he was courteous and respectful and professional every time he contacted the appellant, and there was no evidence presented that he had any personal feelings, and he knew the offender and he was trying to cover for him. So based on that, we concurred with their findings.
Thank you, Commander. Board member, any questions for the commander? Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Sherwood, the next thing is you do get another 5 minutes as a rebuttal to anything Executive Director McDermott from the CPOA or the commander from APD said in response to your initial 15 minutes. Would you like to come up and use the 5 minutes as a rebuttal?
I don't know. I really don't know what else to say. I've stated my case. I'm not satisfied, but I don't know what else to say. I just don't understand how a police officer can sit on a case for 5 months. It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems to me like the CPOA is protecting the officer instead of, trying to protect the public. But I don't have any evidence of that. I was in contact with the DA for months. And the evidence that this woman claims the information she claimed she had, nobody told me about. I'm the victim. Why didn't anybody give me all the information that they gave her? They didn't give me any of that information. Why wasn't I included? It sounds to me like they're protecting the police instead of protecting the public. To be quite honest about it. But I don't have much else to say. I'm not satisfied, but I don't know what else to do. So I'm done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sherwood. All right. So with that, I do move that the board convenes in a closed session as authorized via the administrative adjudication proceeding exception to the Open Meetings Act for the limited purpose of discussing the matters presented in CPC 33824. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Ms. Burla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bouillonitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. We're now in closed session. I make a motion to come out of closed session. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brill, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark. Approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. I will pass the mic over to Member Budenaro to present our deliberation.
Thank you, Chair. During our deliberations, we have determined that the appellant has not met the criteria for modification in the ruling of the CPOA director. We affirm and uphold the findings of the CPOA director.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. With that, yes, Council.
Mr. Chair, perhaps that should be done in the form of a motion so that the board can vote on the final decision.
Sure. Yeah. Then I do make a motion that we affirm and uphold the findings of the CPOA and CPOA director for CPC 338-24. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirm.
Member Weimark. Affirm. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barella. With that, that concludes the CPC 338-24. Next order of business is we will actually take a break, our dinner break, and so we will be back in 30-ish minutes, around 6:20. Might get a, sorry, 7:20, I can tell time. Might get a second for dinner break.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yeah. Chair Bolianitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirm.
Member Weimark. Affirm. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed. And just for the record, you made the motion to move into dinner break. Thank you.
Yes. Welcome back. The next order of business, sorry, thank you, yes. I make a motion to come out of dinner break. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brillo, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz,
Approved.
Member Budenaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Approved.
Member Weimark. Approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brillo. Now we will move on to the next order of business, which is serious use of force cases. The first case will be presented by Member Budenaro. That is APD case 24-007-2743.
Thank you, Chair. On September 4th, 2024, at approximately 2:20 p.m., Albuquerque police officers responded to a sensitive call at Lavaland Elementary School. A 5-year-old child had disclosed that a man identified as 59-year-old Mr. M had been touching him inappropriately under his clothing. Officers confirmed that Mr. M also had an active warrant. Officers proceeded to the child's residence on Glen Rio Road Northwest, where they located Mr. M. When officers attempted to detain him, one officer took hold of his right wrist while the others secured his left arm. Mr. M bent forward at the waist and pulled his arms toward a nearby set of knives, prompting officers to place him in handcuffs for safety. As officers pressed Mr. M against the wall to secure him, the right side of his face was pressed against the surface. He complained of pain and later reported he sustained scratch above his left eye during the struggle. Once handcuffed, Mr. M resisted by jerking his body, dropping his weight, and refusing to walk. Officers escorted him through the courtyard, during which he yelled to a bystander, "Be my witness, guy, look, they're hurting me." The Independent Agency for Force Division reviewed 6 documented uses of force during this encounter. These included empty hand controls, handcuffing techniques. Investigators determined that in each instance of force was objectively reasonable, minimally necessary, and consistent with APD policy. Medical assistance was provided to Mr. M for a laceration above his left eye. No officers were injured. Despite the seriousness of the initial allegations, Mr. M was not charged and was released from custody. Investigators also confirmed that he had no prior report uses of force. The review concluded with no violations of APD standards, operating procedures, personal rules, or administrative instructions.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Deputy Director Abbasi?
Yes, sir. Chair, members of the board, this case concerns a level 3 use of force incident involving Mr. M during a course of an alleged child abuse investigation. Officer also believed that Mr. M had an active misdemeanor warrant for failure to appear in court, though the warrant was unconfirmed at the time of his detention. Upon contact, Mr. M was found to be in possession of knives and did not comply with officers' command and actively resisted, as officers made the decision to place him under arrest for the warrants. Officer employed empty hand control techniques to address his active resistance and to prevent him from reaching for the knives. While handcuffed, Mr. M continued to resist. Officer pushed him against the wall to restrict his movement and secure the knives, and during the struggle, Mr. M sustained injury above his left eye. Following the incident, he was escorted to the patrol vehicle. EMS were requested on scene. They evaluated him and cleared him. He was later released from custody after it was determined that the NCIC had initially indicated a warrant under his name, but upon verification, the warrant was no longer valid. The IAFD investigation determined the force used by officers to be in compliance with policy. During the discussions at the Force Review Board, members discussed the importance of articulating the distinction between an individual between detaining an individual and placing the individual under arrest. A referral was made by the Force Review Board to provide additional guidance to the department on this issue. The Force Review Board also emphasized that warrant must be confirmed prior to placing an individual under arrest. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just for a follow-up on the referral. What IAFD did was actually we put out a quarterly newsletter. So on the newsletter that corresponded with this particular incident, we did inform the department the differences, or at least just kind of re-educating them on the differences between detaining somebody and actually arresting somebody. We try to define that for them as best as possible, give them scenarios on, hey, this is a detention, this is an arrest, this is when you can detain, this is when you can arrest. So we did follow through with that referral and sent that out to the department.
Thank you, Commander. Any questions from the board? Nope. Thank you. Sure. So I'm going, do we agree with the findings? Yes. All right. Then I make a motion, excuse me. Oh, I thought you were about to raise your hand, sorry. I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force investigation for APD case 24-00-72743. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenara. Ms. Spurlock, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Approved.
Member Budenara,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Affirm.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Burley. The next APD case will be presented by Member Calderon, and that is APD case 24-00-77318.
Thank you, Chair. This is APD case 24-00-77318. This incident occurred on 9/19 of 2024 at approximately 0250 hours in the mornings. Officers were dispatched to St. John's United Church at 2626 Arizona Street Northeast in reference to an audible alarm. Upon officers arriving to the scene, they discovered broken glass on the building. Officers contacted the responsible party requesting permission to search the building. The responsible party also advised that they were willing to prosecute anyone that was inside. Officers notified dispatch to start a K-9 officer to assist with the search of the building. K-9 officers arrived to the scene. Upon that, while at the doorway, officers identified themselves, providing 3 audible force warnings for anyone in the building to come out, or a police dog will find them and bite them. After approximately 31 seconds, there was no surrender, nor did anyone make a presence known. Officers released the police service dog, and officers began to search the building. The search team arrived at the chapel area, and a male voice could be heard yelling. Mr. E was observed on the ground with the police service dog biting his wrist. The PSD was removed, and Mr. E was taken into custody. These use of forces were investigated by IFD and found to be objectively reasonable within APD policy. The force was determined to be reasonable, minimal, and necessary. The individual's behavior after being taken into custody was verbally uncooperative. After being taken into custody, medical was provided. Officers were not injured. Mr. E had puncture wounds and fractured left wrist. Mr. E was charged with commercial burglary and resisting, evading, obstructing an officer. One other use of force was identified with Mr. E prior, so F2024-000093. Policy violations, violations of personal rules, and violations of administrative instructions were not identified. There was no concerns for tactics, training, policy, equipment, supervision, or anything other. That's my case.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Deputy Director Abbasi, would you like to add anything from the ZPOA's perspective?
Yes, Chair, Member Calderon, members of the board. Member Calderon pretty much covered the synopsis of this whole case. Just to add that in accordance with the standard practice for these type of calls, when there's audible alarms, a K-9 unit is usually requested to assist in locating the individuals inside the premises. So the deployment of the police service dog in this case is considered a lower level of force option under such circumstances, as it reduces the risk of deadly encounter and enhances officers' safety during these searches. One additional thing, the Force Review Board did discuss this case at their meeting, and they discussed the issue concerning the clarity of the force warning that was issued by the dog handler during this case, and they did appear to be slightly unclear, and the handler in this case communicated it quickly than like how you were supposed to. So that was the only issue that was discussed.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything you would like to add?
You know, we actually concurred with that. We took issue with the clarity, the speed, and the volume at which those force warnings were given. We did, I believe that the deputy chief of the Special Operations Division contacted the K-9, the commander of tactical, and they went ahead and conducted some training on doing building searches with clear, concise, loud, and slow commands. So that issue was remedied as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commander. Board members, any questions? No? Thank you. All right. With that, then I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0077318. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirm.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Perla.
Of course.
Time up here. All right. The next APD case for review is case 24-0075982, presented by Member Weimark.
Person's information, AS, aka KS. On September 15, 2024 at 0:26 hours, it was reported that at Hope Village that KS, who'd been previously banned, was refusing to leave. KS was physically fighting with her boyfriend, EB, threatening to kill him. Officers 1 and 2 were called to the scene. Officer 1 tried to break the fight up. He grabbed KS's shoulder and swung her around. He used a right-hand empty hand takedown and then put his left forearm to the top of her back. KS then bent her knees, putting them in the air. Officer 1 pushed her to her knees and pushed her down onto her stomach. Officer 2 handcuffed her. Refusing to comply with any demand, she was placed in the marked police car. She started banging her head and kicking the cage and also kicked Officer 1. Officers 1 and 2 grabbed her pant legs and did an empty hand leg sweep. They then applied PRS to her. Once applied, she became compliant. Medical attention was provided, but KS refused to speak with the EMS. She had a scrape on her left knee that wasn't photographed. The officers were unharmed. KS was charged with battery on a household member. She also had a felony warrant. Based on the totality of the events, the uses of force, except for a policy violation of SOP, were deemed reasonable and necessary. No other violations occurred. The violations were a lack of mandatory recording, not activating an OBRD, and not behaving in a manner beyond reproach. No deficiencies or concerns were identified except for an officer's car key not working in the lock.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Deputy Director Abbasi.
Yes, Chair. Member Weimark covered most of the things that were in this case. This use of force was classified as level 3 use of force due to a leg sweep on a handcuffed subject causing injury, which escalated it to a level 3 use of force. The department found the force within policy, and the other potential policy violations, as Member Weimark stated, were concerning the use of OBRD. The officer who got on scene first forgot to activate his OBRD, and the other potential violation concerned the officer's expression of frustration with the department use of force processes while in conversation with his supervisor. So all those issues were handled appropriately by the department.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything that you would like to add?
Nothing I'd like to add at this point.
Any questions for the Commander? All right, then pull my cheat sheet here. Then I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0075982. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro,
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Affirmed.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. The next APD case is 24-00922613, presented by myself. This case, the date of incident was November 8th at approximately 1600 hours in 2024. There were 4 level 3s, empty hand takedown control and empty hand takedown with injury and handcuff, which were all deemed in policy. A short summary, on November 8th, Albuquerque officers were dispatched to a Walmart at 3500 Coors Boulevard in response to a report of an intoxicated male, later identified as Mr. J, harassing customers and refusing to leave the premises. Officers 1 and 2 arrived on the scene and made contact with Mr. J outside the store. A check through NCIC revealed he had 5 active felony warrants. Mr. J was taken into custody without incident and transported to the PTC, Prisoner Transport Center. While at the PTC, he complained to the staff that his heart was racing, prompting them to notify the officers and arranging for an ambulance. The officers resumed custody and transported Mr. J to Loveless Hospital for medical evaluation. At the hospital emergency room, Mr. J became disruptive and repeatedly stood up despite instructions to remain seated, leading the officers to grab him and the chair for his security. He then stood up and grabbed the chair and attempted to leave the area. Officers 1 and 2 intervened by grabbing the chair and placing it back on the ground, forcing Mr. J to sit down again. During this and similar other attempts while handcuffed, he likely sustained minor scratches on his knuckles. Shortly after Mr. J stood up once more, he tried to flee towards the emergency room doors, dragging a chair behind him. Officer 2 grabbed his shoulders while Officer 1 grabbed his right side, and together they performed an empty hand takedown to bring him to the ground. Again, minor scratches in his knuckles were noted, likely occurring to his attempts to escape restraint. Based on the totality of circumstances, the force used was reasonable, minimally, and necessary. Those were all yeses. The individual's behavior after taken into custody. Mr. J continued to be disruptive after he was taken into custody, and officers had to apply the PRS to Mr. J. Medical was provided to the individual. Officers were not injured, but Mr. J did have minor scratches on his knuckles. Mr. J was charged with 5 felony warrants and resisting, evading, and/or obstructing an officer. No other use of forces were located on Mr. J. No policy or tactics were called out except for Officer 1's OBRD audio was cutting in and out. Deputy Director Abbasi, does the CPOA have anything to add?
Yes, Chair, just few things. Similar to the last case, this case involves the use of force, empty hand techniques and empty hand control takedown on a handcuffed subject, which raised it to a level 3 use of force. During the initial part of the incident, we believe the officer did a very good job in utilizing de-escalation and active listening skills and successfully taking him into custody without any incident. The actual level 3 incident transpired later when he was transported to the hospital. FRB did discuss the importance of not handcuffing individuals to the objects. As in this case, the individual was handcuffed to the chair, and also maintaining proper control of the individuals who are handcuffed behind their back. So those are the only things that were discussed.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, is there anything that you would like to add?
Nothing at this point, no.
Weird question, was it just a technical glitch for the OBRD cutting in and out, or just out of curiosity?
That I don't have an answer for you on that one. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I just was curious. Board members, do you have any questions? All right. Then with that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the findings for APD Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0092613. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brittle. The next order of business is officer-involved shooting cases. The first case up, which is APD case 24-006-7214, will be presented by Member Budenaro.
Thank you, Chair. This incident took place August 17th of 2024 at approximately 15:48 hours. This incident began earlier in the afternoon when a patrol officer responded to a Family Dollar store on Broadway Boulevard for a request involving a police escort. While waiting, she observed a man later identified as 44-year-old Mr. P running from the store with stolen items. While being chased by employees, the officer drew her service weapon at one point and aimed it at him. Mr. P raised his hands and said, "I just can't go back to jail," before fleeing west on Cole Avenue. The officers lost sight of him at that point, and her body cam was not activated, so no video was captured. Investigators later determined her actions at first were within policy except for the body cam. Officers regrouped near Arno Street Southeast, where a homeowner told them that a man was hiding in the backyard shed. An officer armed with a rifle entered the yard, identified himself, and attempted to communicate with Mr. P. Mr. P fired a round towards him, striking the ground nearby. The officer saw the muzzle flash and returned fire. A perimeter was established and tactical activation was authorized. This use of force was later found to be objectively reasonable and within policy. SWAT officers were then deployed using specialized equipment. One SWAT officer inserted a chemical deployment nozzle into the shed, released tri-chamber gas. The tactic was successful and forced Mr. P to exit. As he emerged, multiple officers saw him raise a firearm. One SWAT officer fired a single round, striking him in the chest. Despite this injury, Mr. P attempted to flee. Another officer fired a 40-millimeter impact round, which hit Mr. P's left hand and caused him to fall to the ground. To gain compliance, officers then deployed noise flashbang distraction devices. Covering officers move in, and the tactical arrest team took Mr. P into custody. Mr. P was unconscious at the time of the arrest. Medical aid was immediately provided, but he succumbed to his injuries. He sustained a fatal gunshot wound to his chest, a 40-millimeter impact injury to his hand, and lacerations to his leg and head. One officer sustained minor abrasions to his hand during the encounter. Independent agency IA reviewed all 9 uses of force applied during this incident. Each was determined to be objectively reasonable and within APD policy. Investigators concluded force was used was reasonable, minimal, necessary under the circumstances, while the standard operating procedure violation was noted. No violations of personnel rules or administrative instructions were identified. Because Mr. P died from his injuries, no criminal charges were filed. Investigators found a record of prior use of force incidents involving him. Found no prior uses of force, I should say.
Thank you, Member Budenaro. Deputy Director Abbasi, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Chair, members of the board. This case concerns an OIS involving Mr. P, which, as Member Budenaro stated, originated from a theft incident at a Family Dollar store earlier. A field service officer was on scene for an unrelated matter, and she observed Mr. P leaving the store after allegedly stealing merchandise, with store employees pursuing him. The officer pursued Mr. P in her patrol vehicle, and in an attempt to detain him, during the pursuit, Mr. P discarded the merchandise, displayed a firearm tucked in his waistband, and stated he did not want to return to jail before fleeing on foot. Mr. P subsequently entered a shed located in a nearby residential backyard. Responding officers established a perimeter and attempted verbal communication to encourage him to surrender peacefully. Despite multiple efforts by the field officers, Mr. P remained barricaded. During the standoff, he discharged his firearm in the direction of the officers, and in response, one officer returned fire toward the shed. The round did not strike Mr. P. A SWAT team was deployed and assumed control of the perimeter. Over the next 2 hours, SWAT officers employed various tactics to achieve a safe surrender, including the use of chemical munitions, armored vehicles, drones, repeated public announcements. Despite all these efforts, Mr. P did not comply with the officers. After approximately 2 hours, Mr. P exited the shed holding a firearm. drone footage showed him raising his arms, pointing the weapon toward his head. Within approximately 1.1 seconds of his movement, assault officers positioned approximately 95 feet away discharged one rifle round, striking and killing Mr. P. I would like to emphasize that the drone was positioned approximately 184 feet above the scene, which provided a different vantage point from what the ground officers see. And they observed him raising a gun, as Member Budonaro stated. The review determined that officers afforded Mr. P significant time and multiple opportunities to surrender safely. Despite all these efforts, Mr. P did not comply with the commands and discharged his weapon toward officers during the incident earlier with the field officers. IFT, during the course of investigation, identified other potential issues concerning OBRD usage, communication protocols, and an officer's positioning that raised safety concern, and each of those issues were addressed appropriately by the department. Additionally, a conflict between the use of force and tactical unit policy regarding the classification of a noise flash diversionary device was identified, which has been resolved to ensure there is policy alignment. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abbasi. Commander Norris, is there anything that you would like to add?
Nothing to add.
Board members, any questions?
I have one question. The finding of the perimeter being set, that wasn't attack, guys. That was the patrol.
That was right. That was well, yeah. Usually, how it works is what we'll do is we'll set a perimeter. Well, we have an inner perimeter and an outer perimeter. Usually, is what we like to set on those types of things, those barricades. And the field is responsible for initially setting both inner and outer. Once they are relieved by tactical relieves the inner perimeter officers. They take all of those posts, but we still have our field officers on the outer perimeter.
Oh, okay. I have one other question, but I think it's for the city attorney. When that homeowner, there was some damage done to the shed, there was damage done. Is there relief for somebody who had absolutely nothing to do with it? Would the city pay for damage repair?
Chair and members of the board, that's a very good question. We have had instances that have resulted in settlements, I believe. There can be routes through filing complaints with city risk department, and of course litigation. It depends on the situation is what I'm going to say, but there certainly are avenues, is what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bruno. Do you have any questions? All right. I assume we all agree with the findings? I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force investigation for APD case 24-006-7214. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budonaro. Ms. Burla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bullion.
Affirmed.
Member Budonaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirm.
Member Weimar.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Burla. The next APD case will be 24-009-3346, presented by Vice Chair Calderon.
Thank you, Chair. Date of incident was November 11th of 2024. Level of forces that were used was level 3 by officer number 1, an OIS rifle ×3. Officer number 2, firearms OIS rifle ×6. Officer number 3, firearm OIS handgun. Level 2 was officer number 4, 40 millimeter deployment. Level 1s were officer number 1, rifle pointing. Officer number 4, show of force with a 40 millimeter. And officer number 5 for handgun pointing. Summary events on November 11th, 2024, APD officers responded to multiple 911 calls reporting an intoxicated man armed with a handgun at a Speedway gas station at 2401 San Mateo Boulevard Northeast. Callers described that the man was threatening and waving the firearm, making verbal threats and chambering a round. Officers coordinated nearby to develop a tactical approach with officer number 1 and officer number 2 with rifles, officer number 3 armed with a handgun, and officer number 4 with a 40 millimeter launcher. Upon arrival, officer number 3 identified the suspect, later confirmed as AH, and issued commands. Officer number 4 deployed a 40mm round as AH turned and simultaneously AH raised his handgun towards officers. Officer number 1 illuminated him with a rifle-mounted light. As the encounter escalated, AH advanced on officers while they issued repeated commands to drop his weapon. AH then pointed his handgun at officers and fired a single round at officers. In response, officer number 1 fired 3 rifle rounds. Officer number 2 fired 6 rifle rounds. Officer number 3 fired 1 round after seeing muzzle flashes aimed towards him. AH and a nearby bystander, RJ, were struck and fell to the ground. AH was non-responsive after being taken into custody. Individual's behavior after taken into custody, AH was not responsive as he was taken into custody. Medical attention was provided. Injuries sustained by officers and or individuals. Officers were not injured. AH received numerous gun wounds. AE's additional bystander had a gunshot wound to her left arm and a minor abrasions to her left leg. RJ had a gunshot wound to his left elbow, back, and side, as well as a small fracture to his C2 and C3 vertebrae. DD, as well, an additional bystander, had a minor abrasion to the top of his head, and 2 middle fingers were partially missing from a bullet, knocking him off. The individual was not charged due to being unresponsive at the time of taking him into custody. AH had no other uses of forces with APD. Summary of findings from IAFD: all uses of forces of this incident were investigated by IAFD and determined to be objectively reasonable with an APD policy. Policy discrepancies, policy violations of standard operating procedures were identified. No policy violations were for personal rules and regulations or administrative instructions. Overview real quick of those potential policy violations: SOP 2-3-4-A2, firearms and ammunition authorization; SOP 2-52-6-A-8, use of force, prohibited use of force; SOP 3-14-4-A-1-a, general rules for supervisors; SOP 2-56-4-A-2, use of force reporting by department personnel. Deficiencies for tactics, concerns were identified, and the patrol vehicle's emergency equipment was not activated while making contact with the armed subject, as well as officers' rounds were struck an additional vehicle that was within the area, as well as the possibility of officers providing the wrong or incorrect announcements after the shots were fired. No training deficiencies were identified, no policy deficiencies, no equipment, no supervision deficiencies, and no other deficiencies were identified. All use of forces were in policy per APD.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Deputy Director Abbasi, does CPO have anything to add?
Yes, Chair. Members of the board, few things. This incident occurred outside the Speedway gas station located on San Mateo and Cutler near I-40. Officers were dispatched through multiple reports of a male subject who was later identified as Mr. H, reportedly intoxicated, in possession of a firearm, and was accompanied by his 3-year-old daughter. Callers indicated that he's been waving a gun around and attempting to purchase alcohol. Store employees locked him out of the store, and he remained in the vicinity, and at one point he's observed pushing the locked door open. Responding officers met nearby and developed a coordinated approach. Roles were assigned, including lethal and less lethal coverage, communication responsibilities, and the deployment of protective positioning behind a patrol unit. Upon arrival, officer positioned themselves approximately 66 to 70 feet away from the store entrance where Mr. H was standing, and there were several bystanders that were present in the immediate vicinity as confirmed by the video evidence. Officer identified Mr. H and issued him verbal commands. One officer deployed a 40mm round, striking Mr. H in the chest. Immediately thereafter, Mr. H raised his weapon and discharged a firearm toward the direction of the officers. In response, multiple officers returned fire, discharging a total of 10 rounds between 3 officers. Mr. H was struck and pronounced deceased at scene. 3 bystanders, as Member Calderon stated, were injured. 2 were seated in a parked vehicle adjacent to Mr. H, and they drove away immediately following the incident. A 3rd bystander near Mr. H sustained multiple gunshot wounds. Officers rendered him aid, and the individual was transported to the hospital. He survived his injuries. Mr. H's daughter was located in the far north corner of the store where she was shielded by another individual during the incident. After the gunfire stopped, that individual brought the child safely to the officers. The IAFT investigation determined that officers did not violate Department Policy 2-526A8 prohibits firing less lethal or lethal munitions in a crowded environment unless, considering the totality of the circumstance, the risk to bystanders is outweighed by the necessity and likelihood of stopping the individual. Investigators found that when Mr. H fired a round toward the officers, the immediate threat necessitated a deadly force response despite the presence of 6 bystanders in the area, 3 of whom sustained gunshot wounds. There were other potential misconduct that was identified during the force investigations, and all those issues were handled appropriately by the department.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abbasi. Commander Norris, is there anything you would like to add?
Nothing to add at this point.
Board members, do you have any questions for Deputy Director Abbasi or Commander Norris?
Yeah, Commander, did the officers have time to instruct the bystanders to get out of the way, get down, or anything like that?
Yes, actually, upon their approach and while they were giving this individual verbal commands, they were telling everybody to kind of get out of the way. You had verbal commands saying, get out of the way. One officer was directing another individual who was kind of away from the scene, but close enough to where he felt that that individual was in danger to, hey, come here, come towards me, stay over here. So there were, the problem with that is you had people at the Speedway who were also under the influence of something, to include the person who was pointing the gun. So these individuals were having a difficult time. They were like, the best way to explain it is they were like, what? And then they just started walking towards the officer and getting close to each other. So we did, yes.
The one that I have is about one of the potential policy violations, which was SOP 2-3-4-8-2, which was the firearm and ammunition authorization. Mm-hmm. And it really kind of going down all of that was kind of summarizing the 4 rules of gun safety. And I'm just kind of curious of what that was related to. Was that related to the bystanders or something else?
It was related to bystanders. Oh. So in order to ask some of the questions that we needed to ask to try and fully understand how this incident unfolded, the perspectives of the officers, the actions they took, why they took those actions. If there was a potential policy violation that we identified that was related to the questions that we were going to ask, we have to send out what we refer to as a subject of investigation letter. And that needs to be investigated as a misconduct and then a finding made on that SOP. So with regard to your question, that's why we send out those subject of investigation letters, is because from what we could see on an OBRD, obviously it's a very limited view. It's not a fully 100% accurate depiction of what always happens in terms of angle, lighting, distance, I mean, everything. So those are some of the questions we had to ask with regard to firearm safety at some of the individuals who were not the intended target.
Okay, yeah, and then, and then with the personal, the use of force, the 5-2 that Deputy Director Abbasi talked to or spoke about, is once Mr. H depressed the trigger and fired a round, that sent the officers to go, yep, we're going to use lethal force to ensure this is stopped. Is that correct? Regardless of, or not regardless, but.
I'm sorry, what's your question?
Once Mr. H depressed the trigger and fired a round at the officers, that triggered the officers to shoot back, but still hit bystanders. But that was the immediate, is to stop the threat. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That was what my assumption was. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking the right way. Cool. Any other questions? Do we all agree with the findings of IAFD?
What?
Do we agree with the findings of IAFD?
I agree with the findings.
All right. Let me then pull up my cheat sheet here. Then I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0093346. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Brillo, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bouillonitz,
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro,
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Affirmed.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brillo. The next APD case is 24-0086447, presented by Member Weimark.
Date of the incident was October 18th, 2024. Types of force and AFD findings were level 3, Officer 1, officer involved shooting times 7 out of policy. Officer 2, officer involved shooting times 4 out of policy. Level 1, Officer 3, empty hand control in policy. Officer 1, empty hand control in policy. Officer 1, handgun pointing, SOF in policy. Officer 2, empty hand out of policy. That's what it said, and I didn't understand what it meant. Empty hand out of policy. It must have been a sweep or a control.
An empty hand technique,
Okay.
a use of force with an officer's personal weapons, which would be his.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Officer 2, handgun pointing, SOF in policy. Involved individual MG. Other officers involved, officer number 4. Yes, that makes it long, I'm sorry. Command staff were contacted to meet with APD, AFR, ACS, code enforcement, and solid waste to aid in conducting experiments at Tewa Lodge. Tiwa, thank you. No formal plan was drafted from that meeting. APD's apparent role was to provide security to code enforcement and make initial contact with tenants. No action was to be taken with barricaded individuals or individuals refusing to answer the door. Officers stated during their interviews that the briefing was informal and their roles were not clearly defined. Officers contacted a man later identified as MG. Officer 1 observed that he was wearing a necklace with a green vial, which is commonly used to contain fentanyl. MG was initially advised by code informant of the inspection, and he exited the unit that he was in. He asked the officers if they were worried about weapons. When asked for his information, he gave a false name, put his hands in his jacket pockets, and looked around. When asked to take his hands out, he did not, so officer requested aid, and officers 1 and 2 responded. Officer 2 advised him that he was being detained and gave a false warning. Officer 1 checked his information and advised MG that he was concealing his identity. At this point was there a pat down, just saying. There was no pat down at that point.
There was no pat down during the entire time.
I know, but I'm saying that was the logical time to have one, and they didn't have one.
Taking somebody into custody and putting them in the back of a vehicle is when you need to be patting them down before you put them in the back of a vehicle.
Okay.
Mhm.
Officer, where was I? When asked to take his hands out, he did not, and so Officer 1 requested aid, and Officer 3 requested aid, and Officers 1 and 2 responded. Officer 2 advised him that he was being detained and gave a false warning. Officer 1 checked his information and advised MG that he was concealing his identity. As he was being verbally combative, Officer 4 put him into the patrol vehicle. No pat-down was conducted. Eventually, after some resistance, MG was put in the back seat by Officers 1 and 2 without being searched. While Officer 1 was completing her investigation, MG sat with his feet outside of the vehicle smoking even though he was handcuffed. Officer 1 removed the vial from around his neck while waiting for the warrants to come through. It was discovered that he had 3 felony warrants once they had his real identity. Because no search had been taken place, MG had to be removed from the vehicle so it could be done. Officer 3 opened the car door and asked MG to step out. MG said, "You really don't want to do this, guys. You really don't want to do this." Officer 1 bent over MG and asked what he had in his hand. MG replied, a gun. Officer 1 put her body weight on MG, trying to pull the gun away. Officer 2 opened the driver's side door, grabbing MG's upper arm and tried to grab the gun. Officer 3 reached in, pulling Officer 1 off of MG and held onto MG's lap, pinning his torso to the back of the seat. Officer 1 and 2's uses of force weren't within APD policy. Officer 3's was within policy. Officer 3, observing the gun was pointed at him, grabbed and pushed it away, making the barrel towards the front of the vehicle. Officer 3 let go of MG, backed out of the vehicle, drew his handgun and fired 4 rounds, while Officer 3 was still pushing MG's gun away. Officer 1 grabbed her handgun, told Officer 3 to get out of the way and fired 7 rounds at MG. As Officer 1 fired her last round, Officer 3 exited the vehicle holding MG's gun. These uses of force were investigated by AFD, and were found not to be minimal, necessary, and not within APD policy. Officers 1 and 2 pointed their handguns at MG until Officer 3 told them they had the gun, that he had the gun. The uses of force were found to be reasonable within policy. Based on the totality of the circumstances, the force used was reasonable but not minimal, as when Officer 1 and 2. The force used by Officers 1 and 2 was not necessary. Policy violations were identified for standard operating procedure. None were identified for personnel rooms or in administration instructions. MG had actively resisted when attempts were made to remove him from the vehicle, which resulted in force that he expired from. The deficiency was identified in that MG had not been searched before he was placed in the police vehicle. Deficiencies were identified in training. No deficiencies were identified with policy equipment or supervision. However, lack of operational clarity was identified as an issue. I'm done. Nearly killed me, but I'm done.
Deputy Director Abbasi, does CPOA have anything to add?
Yes, Chair, member of the boards. This case involved an officer-involved shooting at Tiva Lodge during a coordinated TAC plan between APD and Code Enforcement Division. The purpose of the operation was to inspect every room for code compliance and determine whether the occupants could remain temporarily, meaning for additional 10 days, or they were required to vacate immediately, depending on the conditions. ACS personnel were also there on the scene to provide resources to those individuals. Based on the review of several documents associated with the incident, from the outset, as Member Weimark stated, the briefing and the operational plan between APD and code enforcement lacked clarity, particularly regarding whether officer were to identify, detain, or otherwise engage the individual encountered, or whether they were there only to provide security for code enforcement personnel if a situation escalates. During the operation, officer contacted Mr. G. He declined to provide his name or identification. An officer detained him on the basis of concealing identity and later told the supervisor and other officers on scene that she believed his necklace might contain pills, referencing her prior experience with similar items and similar encounters. OBRD footage showed, she also stated, Mr. G made her nervous due to his demeanor. Mr. G was handcuffed and placed in the back of the patrol vehicle without being subjected to a pat-down search. Throughout this time, as evident by objective OBRD footage, multiple officers on scene questioned the basis for the detention. The detaining officer expressed frustration as a result of other officers questioning, which again is evident by the OBRD evidence. After over 30 minutes, the officer confirmed through system checks that Mr. G had 3 active felony warrants. IAFD investigation determined that the officer's perceptual beliefs were subsequently corroborated by the objective evidence, and the lawful objective was established. Following confirmation of the warrants, officer prepared to remove Mr. G from the car. At that point, officer observed a firearm in his possession. One officer attempted to control Mr. G's hands to prevent him from firing while still handcuffed. 2 officers discharged their weapons in fear that he will shoot the officers, firing 11 rounds and fatally striking him. The review determined that although a lethal threat was present at the moment the firearm was discovered, the deficiencies in planning and execution contributed to the circumstances of the incident. The lack of clear operational plan, the decision to detain and place him in the back of the patrol car without a pat down, and the prolonged effort to articulate probable cause were identified as significant concerns. IAFD determined that officer eventually did establish lawful objective. However, their investigation determined that force was not necessary, minimal primarily due to the failure to conduct a pat down, which contributed to the need to use the deadly force. And the force by the IAFD division was found out of policy based on those reasons that it was not necessary or minimal.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abbasi. Commander Norris, is there anything that you would like to add?
I'll stand for questions.
Board members, do we have any questions?
I guess purely out of curiosity, when I was reading over the reports, there was one report that said it witnessed a pat down, which was obviously patently untrue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just purely out of curiosity, how that happened.
Well, what it was the sergeant who was kind of in the same complex around. They had handcuffed him. They had handcuffed this individual. From the vantage point of the office of that sergeant, some of the motions they were taking, he said it looked consistent as if they were patting him down.
Okay.
He said that's why I didn't tell them to pat him down before they put him in the car, because from what I saw, I assumed that they had patted him down. Plus, it's just kind of what we do if we put somebody in the back of a police car in handcuffs, not even in handcuffs, they're going to get patted down to ensure they don't have any weapons. So.
Okay.
Yeah, you answered my question as, would there be a time, regardless if somebody was in handcuffs or not, if they're getting put in the back of the vehicle, if they would not be pat down or not?
I would say 99.9% of the time we put people in the back of vehicles, they're going to be patted down.
Okay, yeah, that especially if they're in handcuffs, to be pat down.
Yes.
Okay, that was the kind of the one question, is because I watched some of the video and I was like, okay, she was just kind of like, hey, sit back here for a second. And I was like, oh, okay, but like, you should at least pat him down. So that was kind of one of those, like, are you just kind of putting them there to put them there just to like hang out for a bit? Would you still do a pat down? And but the answer is yes. So, answer my question. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we all agree with the findings with IAFD?
Yes, they were thorough.
I do.
Yeah, thorough, totally agree. All right, then with that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-008-6447. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Member Coldrow. Ms. Brilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Weimer.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. The next APD case, 24-008-4942, will be presented by myself. The date of incident was October 13th at approximately 23:30 hours. There it was. Forces used, firearm discharge from Officer 1 one time, and then Officers 2 and 3, firearm discharge 4, all were in policy, and then for any level 1s, Officers 1 and 2, show of force handgun in policy. On October 13th, 2024, around 11:30 p.m., APD officers were dispatched to 10804 Central Avenue Southeast. Following 911 calls of a domestic dispute, the caller stated that her stepmother's boyfriend, Mr. S., has assaulted her stepmother, and the pair was inside the bedroom. While on the phone with dispatch, gunshots were heard in the background at approximately 11:24. Dispatch then reported that Mr. S. was walking westbound on Central Southeast, armed with a gun. Officers established a a forced array and approached the trailer on foot at about 11:45 from the outside of the residence. They identified themselves, making verbal announcements, and issued use of force warnings. Mr. S exited the trailer, reporting, saying, we're not going to repeat it, while walking angrily at a fast pace and ignoring commands to stop. He then advanced quickly towards the officer, stating, "I got a gun right here," as he closed the distance. Officer 3 noted that Mr. S's hands were initially at his sides and not visible. When Mr. S turned and faced Officer 3, officers identified him pointing a weapon at Officer 3 and briefly activated his weapon mounted light before discharging the rifle round 4 times. Discharging his rifle 4 times at Mr. S. Officer 3 ceased firing after being shot, believed it was by Mr. S, dropping to the ground, sitting against a chain link fence. Simultaneously, Officer 2, armed with a 40 millimeter, observed Mr. S turning the corner towards her and announced he has a gun before transitioning to her handgun. She activated her weapon-mounted light and fired 4 rounds at Mr. S, stopping once he fell to the ground. Afterwards, Officer 2 commanded Mr. S to stay down, approached him, and kicked the black handgun away, covering him with her weapon. Officer 1, seeing Mr. S with a gun, pointed their handgun at him and verbally noted the weapon. She observed Mr. S raising his right arm with a firearm towards the officers and discharged her handgun once. Based on the totality of circumstances, force used was reasonably minimal and necessary. All were yeses. The individual was declared deceased at the scene. Medical was provided to Mr. S. Officer S sustained a laceration on his arm and laterally anterior to his right arm, and a large laceration to his right hand. Mr. S sustained multiple impacts to his body and was declared deceased on the scene. No charges were brought towards Mr. S. There were no other uses of force located for Mr. S. Potential SOP issues or policies identified were use of force guidelines, duty to provide medical attention and transport, mandatory recording, and department-approved firearms. And then for training defects, application of a tourniquet by an officer in performance during a firing of their handgun, and proper verbiage using use of force warnings. Deputy Director Abbasi, does the CPOA have anything that they would like to add?
Yes, Chair, members of the board. This was a reported domestic dispute incident, and prior to the arrivals of officer, multiple gunshots were reported from within the residence where Mr. S was, including one that was audible when the 911 call was ongoing. When officer responded and announced their presence, Mr. S, he exited the residence in an aggressive manner, making verbal statements, including, and I quote, "You wanna F around, I got a gun right here." The encounter occurred in the dark nighttime conditions. Officer observed Mr. S was armed, and as he quickly closed the distance, one officer shouted, "Gun," and 3 officers discharged firearm almost immediately. The encounter was rapid, leaving no opportunity for de-escalation. A total of 9 rounds were fired in this incident, and Mr. S died as a result of his injuries. During the incident, one officer was struck by gunfire in the arm. The investigation determined that the round had been fired by another officer positioned behind him. The officer was transported to the hospital, and his injuries were determined to be non-life-threatening. There were concerns, as Member Bullianat stated, in delay in rendering aid to Mr. S following the shooting, which was considered a potential policy violation. However, the investigation determined that the scene was not secure and it was not feasible to render aid to him at that time. There were additional potential policy concerns that were noted, including safe handling of firearms, pre-use of force consideration, OBRD used by an uninvolved officer. These matters were addressed through appropriate corrective measures. The Force Review Board also examined tactical considerations, including the absence of coordinated force array planning processes, and questioned the decision to not use the patrol vehicle as cover, despite prior knowledge that the shots have been fired before the arrival of the officers. And then a mandatory training referral was generated for the officers who unintentionally shot the other officer for remedial firearm trainings, as well as the application of tourniquets. The force itself was found within APD policy by the Force Division.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abbas. Commander Norris, is there anything that you would like to add?
Nothing to add at this point.
Board members, any questions for CPOA or?
Just a slightly silly one. How was the use of the tourniquet misapplied? Wasn't it tight enough or something like that?
It wasn't necessarily tight enough. It was just the application of the tourniquet was just deficient in terms of trying to stop the bleed on the officer who was shot. Just the officer who was trying to apply it just could not properly apply it.
Okay.
So it didn't have anything to do with tightness or anything like that. It was, I think in this particular case, she didn't have a tourniquet on her. She had to use the other officer's tourniquet, and officers are required to carry those tourniquets with them.
Okay, thank you.
This is more about the officer who got hit by another officer. What was that officer who hit him part of the use of force? Was it Officer 3, the one that had the 40 millimeter, or was it? I'm curious of what officer hit the officer who sustained the gunshot wound.
Well, not the officer with the 40 millimeter, otherwise he would have sustained a 40 millimeter wound.
Right, yeah.
Right, so it was, as far as the numbers of the officers, I can't tell you. I don't know the numbers of the officers. I can tell you the names, which I will not do.
Yeah, for sure,
right.
yeah.
So I don't understand. So it was one of the officers with the firearms who was approaching, and when this person presented a deadly threat, this officer properly engaged. Unfortunately, her tactics were subpar as well as her firearm safety. So that's what those mandatory training referrals were sent for. And some, we also took some additional extensive measures with her before she went back in service into the field.
Okay, yeah, I was, because I watched that and I was like, what happened? And so that makes more sense. I was just kind of curious if it was like a rifle round or a pistol round, and
No,
where
it
was.
It was a pistol round.
Okay, yeah, I just was kind of curious of where they were in relationship to each other, so that's more.
Right, yeah, she was behind him. They were going up in a stack. She was behind him, and when the person presented a threat, she took kind of like evasive action to get out of the way of the threat, but unfortunately when she did that, she simultaneously started to engage the threat.
Yeah. Okay, no, that makes, I just was like, what happened?
Sure.
Cool. Sorry. Deputy
Chair,
Director.
just to answer your question, there were 3 officers. One was deployed with a rifle, one with 40 mm, the other one with handgun. And the plan was that the one who was deployed with handgun would transition to hands-on when needed.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I just was kind of curious as to what happened. So,
sure.
Do we all agree with IFD's? Okay. All right. So with that, I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-0084942. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Ms. Brillo, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bouillon.
Affirmed.
Member Budenara.
Affirmed.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Weimer.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Can I do a comment before?
Yes.
Just like the new structure of your guys' reports, you have a lot more detail in it. I love it.
Okay, great.
Because it gives us the bigger picture of it, right? Even if it's the written aspect of it. So it helps us a lot to understand that. And of course, you guys finding findings that officers were in the wrong and still being very public about that, we appreciate that because it's holding accountability within itself, right?
Sure.
And so I want to commend you and your teams on that because
Thank you.
it helps us ensure that transparency, but that we're holding accountability to ourselves, right? So thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I second that. Yeah, thank you, Commander Norris.
Thank you.
Likewise with the case that I reported.
Absolutely.
All right. The next order of business is report from the CPOA-B subcommittees. That would be the Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee, presented by Vice Chair Calderon.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. The Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee met on September 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m. at our new office buildings. We will report out in the next section the items from that meeting. The next meeting will be scheduled on October 2nd of 2025 at 3 p.m. Oh, right before Balloon Fiesta. Anyways, I know. So yeah, October 2nd of 2025 at 3 p.m. at our new offices. Notice will be posted prior.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any questions for Member Calderon? No? All right. Then the next order of business is discussion of possible action. The first item up on that is the establishment of the Ad Hoc Rules Committee. So as a reminder, we have to do this annually. This is basically the board's, the CPOA board's policy and procedure. So we need to establish this and then review our policies and procedures, which is all the fun. Do I have volunteers as tribute for this? Aaron and I did it last year. That too.
Oh, your mic.
You're gonna turn on your mic if you're gonna make snarky comments.
Experience counts for something, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'd rather not. I want a lot of them already.
You respectfully decline.
I respectfully decline, yes.
We can always just tell him by vote.
When's the new guys
I know
start
you're
again?
looking at me.
Do you want to do it?
I'll do
Not
it,
soon
just
enough.
won't be well
Clearly.
done.
Okay. So, what did Member Waymark say?
She'll said that she'll do it if you want.
With the kindness and charity and patience and forbearance of the rest of the other person involved.
Yeah. And a lot of this is reviewing, of course.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have some significant modifications to our rules and procedures.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've been voluntold, apparently.
Cool. All right. You guys have been voluntold as tribute. So yeah, Member Budenara and Member Weimark will be on that committee.
Woohoo.
So proud. Do we need to have a vote
Do we,
for that?
we make a motion, correct? We do.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might, in perusing the board's policies and procedures, as I'm wont to do on a Thursday night, the board's policies and procedures provide that the chair can appoint members to all subcommittees subject to the approval of the board.
Cool. All right. Then I make a motion that we form the Ad Hoc Rules Committee, and the two board members will be Member Weimark and Member Budenaro. May I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. Ms. Perla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bullionitz,
Oh, approved.
Edward Budenaro. Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Did he say yes?
Yeah, you said approved.
Okay, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Fine, you said it.
All right, moving on, Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Okay, and Member Weimar.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that motion passed unanimously.
Unanimously. Thank you for your voluntoldness. I appreciate it. Next order of business is APD policies. There are under no recommendations. So there are no recommendations for a handful of these. So do you want me to read them out one by one? Yes, I'm hearing a yes. All right. So for the following are for no recommendations. SOP-120 Behavioral Science Section, SOP 1-36 Department of Personal Welfare Wellness Program, SOP 1-93 formerly one of those things. 8-11 telephone reporting unit, TRU. SOP 2-5, department vehicles. SOP 2-13, Star Chase Pursue Management System. SOP 2-28, formerly 3-20, Flood Control Channel Action. SOP 2-30, Emergency Command Post, ECP. SOP 2-35, formerly 2-29, Emergency Response Team, ERT. SOP 2-36, Police News Media Relations and Release of Policy Police Identification. SOP 2-77, In-Car Video System, ICVS. SOP 2-79, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Lead Program. SOP 2-84, Body Cavity Searches. SOP 2-99, formerly 1-8, naloxone policy. SOP 2-107, Use of Crime Specialist, CSS Unit.
Can I say a couple comments on one?
I mean, I guess you will have to, Vice Chair.
So SOP 2-77, the in-car video system, APD is now equipping the vehicles with cameras in the vehicles. Deputy Director Abbasi's well knowledge in that, but so they're adding now cameras to the vehicles that go in sync with, of course, with the OBRD, and it allows for it gives the advantage of an additional viewpoint, ideally. So they're working to equip those vehicles now. Quite a few have them. I've seen a couple instances on the street already. So that's just for reference on that one. And then a quick reason why we don't have any recommendations for this is because the work of the CPOA and our policy analyst, Gabe, and as well as, oh my God, I forget her name. Our prior. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, God, Jesus. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. I know, I totally did.
Law school, she's busy. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad she's busy. Emily as well, prior to Gabe taking the position, they worked really hard, and a lot of these policies have come up before them prior in the CPOA, so we've made recommendations on these prior, and so we're coming up to the year of us. So a lot of these are new ones for sure, but as well, we've already reviewed them at one point, so we'll see, hopefully, less policy recommendations, but it's because we have confidence in the way that they're being written currently. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon. All right. Then I can't see you. Oh, yeah. The next order of business is APD responses to policy recommendations.
And there were no formal recommendations.
Sorry, Deputy Director Abbasi. Going to everyone here. Yes.
Mr. Chair, just as a matter of completeness, I think what you have right now is just the subcommittee's report in front of you. So I think it might be appropriate, even though there are no recommendations here, that there be a motion and a vote by the full board with regards to accepting or adopting the subcommittee's report with regards to these particular SOPs.
Do you want to make that one since it's your subcommittee policy? Cool. Since your thing.
Thank you, Council. I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board adopts and upholds the recommendations from the Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Butler, let me get a roll call vote.
Chair Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimer.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brother. And thank you, Council. So now we'll go to APD response of policy recommendations, which is a standing item. Deputy Director McDermott.
Deputy Director.
Sorry, Executive Director. Wow.
I got demoted, okay.
I'm just doing all sorts. He needs to be the chair now. We all agree he should be chair. Executive Director.
Yeah, as it is as a standing item, I don't know if our policy analyst is going to say anything, but I will say, because you'll ask, we are pending a response still from the chief of a particular SOP. We have not received it. I did send a reminder email to him. We were supposed to have a meeting this week, but it wound up having to be canceled for conflicts and things like that on his end. So we will continue to request and make sure that we do have that. Hopefully we'll have it by next month, but just that's the update for that. And then if there was anything else.
Yes. Policy Analyst Gabe, is there anything you would like to add?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Coolsies. I appreciate your time. Awesome. With that, we will move. Oh, any questions just before I move on from the board? No. Next order of business is other business. Is there anything we'd like to bring up? So with that, sorry, CPOA, anybody else, anything for other business we should? No. All right, then the next order of business is adjournment. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held Thursday, October 9th, here in the community chambers here. I make a motion that we adjourn. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Calderon, who's the true chair. Ms. Barella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Bolianis,
Approved.
Member Budenaro,
Approved.
Vice Chair Calderon,
Approved.
Member Weimer.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barella, and everyone have a great rest of your evening.